Hello, everybody. I can't give you the name of the podcast because we're worried about getting community service. So this is the unbiased, perfectly reasonable FIA podcast, and welcome.
And we are very civilized as well. We don't
Yeah.
abuse or say anything bad about anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm fucking glad we got through that. So how are you?
I'm good.
Yeah.
We had a shitty race this weekend. I mean, let's be honest. It was boring,
Yeah.
but that's Singapore, and I think picked a perfect year for not having a safety car. First
Yeah.
time in 16 years. So
It's
good
8
job. Was
races
about
now,
to happen
no
someday.
Singapore, or no safety car, right? 8 races, something like that.
Yeah,
It's insane.
it's been a while. There should have been
Yeah.
one in Baku, ideally. The VSC ended the whole thing, but yeah, it's. I mean, weird things
It
happen
also
in Singapore.
doesn't it also kind of show like what a crazy season it is? Because if a McLaren had to beat a Red Bull last year by 30 seconds, I think it would have been like, this is insane. Because Singapore
Yeah,
last year was insane because it wasn't the Red Bull winning, and now
yeah.
this season is just so good that it's like, it's okay. There was a lot of
I think,
storylines though.
I think honestly, Singapore was so weird that Lando held on to the lead on the first lap, and we didn't even have a safety car. So, two weird things happened in Singapore this time
Yeah,
around. But
yeah,
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 it was. I think it was overall the best part about 2024, and I think now I don't think you follow MotoGP as much or
no, no.
any which way.
No,
It's an
I used to, not
amazing
anymore.
it's an amazing series. Anyone who's watching this thing, do watch it. Amazing championship battle right now. But there's one thing that I feel is going to happen soon with both Formula 1 and MotoGP. There's going to come a point when the entire storylines are not going to be enough,
Mhm.
and then you have to focus on the fact that the on track action is shit right now.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the same case in Formula 1 and MotoGP as well. And the reason is the same, the aerodynamic development on the cars and the bikes. And I think
Yeah.
Formula 1 is. I'm slightly worried how the 2025 season will be because Pirelli seems to be. I think the more non existent Pirelli gets, I think it should ideally be a good thing. But somewhere I
Yeah.
think it is not becoming as big a factor as it should be in a race strategy where overtaking has become very, very tough now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
just my two
I,
cents
I
on the whole thing. Yep.
I think just the other problem is like they keep doing this increasing or taking away of DRS at tracks as well, and it's not helping anything. Like at Spa, they decreased the DRS in the one place we got like no overtakes in DRS trains, and here we
No
got a
logic.
fourth DRS addition, which did help. I suppose there was overtakes, but
Yeah, it did. It
you
did.
know,
I think it
um,
was a good call. The only problem was the tires were not soft enough,
mhm,
so the degradation was not there, and
yeah,
hence, ideally, if there was degradation, we might have seen it. Singapore, for it to be good, it needs a two-stopper,
yeah,
and the
yeah.
surface is abrasive enough, and the surroundings are hot enough that you can get that. And maybe that's something that Pirelli might need to focus on a bit because I think it's I think complacency has set in to an
Yeah,
extent when it comes to
yeah.
Pirelli, and things are a bit like okay, one stoppers, go for it. I don't think that should be the case,
I
especially when overtaking is this stuff.
I wonder if it's time because they brought in like the three compounds to make it simpler for casual fans. So you just have soft, medium, hard. You don't have to
Yeah,
worry about the rainbow effect, where all of us kind of knew the seven different compounds and the
yeah.
different
Super
strategies.
soft, ultra soft, hyper
Yeah,
soft, whatever
yeah.
soft,
Super, super, super
hard,
soft.
ultra hard, medium,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. Horner soft. So yeah, like there's all these different ones that that
Yeah.
I think I like. I get the reason why they got rid of it, but I do think having something like that where you could have a much softer, so you have maybe like the six tires, right?
Right
Figure
now
out a
there are
way to now.
five that are there, and they used to have seven, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, they did.
So
Yeah. So like, if
yeah,
they could have something where you had like a super soft or whatever, even if it was just adding two more, but where you had enough of a tire offset where, for example, the backmarker guys could go on an aggressive two stop where they put on something very, very soft, but it makes a huge difference and they can kind of make a two stop make sense. I
yeah,
think having something like that again would make sense because I think the realistic issue we're having now is kind of the downside of the upside, if that makes sense, which is we've got a very, very close field, both at the back and at the front, which means that we're getting this great season where you don't know who's going to win because the cars are so close. But because the cars are so close, and especially when we get DRS trains, there's no longer the overspeed. So you don't have this big difference for cars to overtake. So it's like kind of...
Ideally, imagine if this was your pecking order in terms of the difference in performance, and we had the kind of racing we had in 2022.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I mean, I always, for me, one of the more fun races was the 2022 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, because the lead changed every lap for I think 3 to 4 laps consistently between Leclerc and Max. It was basically who was smart enough to assess where he needs to have the DRS.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a good thing or a bad thing. Maybe they overdid it to an extent in that race, but it provided great racing. Alonso and Ocon had a great stint earlier in the race as well, when the two just switched positions every lap.
The dirty air did actually work for that season. It's just F1 engineers figure it out all the time.
Yeah, so, that's true. That's true.
I worry now. Remember, I was optimistic about 2026. That's out the window. I'm more and more concerned that it's just going to make racing so much worse. I don't think
that's my worry as well, because I don't see... Look, Active Aero has its benefits in terms of overall car performance, but the kind of impact they have in terms of dirty air is... And also it's a bit of an uncharted territory, right? So
just the fact that they can make it as prescriptive as they want. But the thing is, what people always forget is it's like, oh yeah, but it's just like the opening flap at the front or back or whatever, and that's
no, it's whatever. Not that simple.
The problem with that is when you open that or close that, the air then affects everything else across the whole body of the car. So if you have a guy like Newey in there, and it's not just Newey. There's Rory Byrne. There's all these different James Allison, who was around during the Ferrari years, and these guys have been around in the 90s. Especially Newey, though, because he's lived through active aero, active suspension, everything.
He made his name through that.
Exactly. If he can figure out one thing, you could all of a sudden have a massively dominant Aston Martin. Yeah. Because he's just figured out how to manipulate the aero behind the active aero. And that's that then, So I think it's I hope Max Verstappen goes to Mercedes, because they're going to really screw up these regulations, I feel, and therefore we won't have to worry about him challenging for the title again.
Yeah, I've seen a few Max Verstappen fans cheering picture of Max wearing Mercedes overalls, and I'm like, are you not watching the races right now?
I said this repeatedly when even the race of all people were like, this isn't a false dawn. They've clearly figured something out. They're back. And I was going, well, and we said it on the podcast with Ahmed, was it? And I said, look, I think this is a better year because they're not looking for silver bullets. They're clearly fixing issues, but we're still seeing them perform at kind of peaky tracks. And I kind of want to see like a whole season. And once again, they've dropped to the 4th fastest team over a couple of weeks.
They'll be back. They'll be back in Austin.
That's Austin their and track. Brazil. They'll be back again.
Mexico as well.
Yes, possibly Mexico as well. Yeah. So, but people would be like, oh, they're back. They figured it out. It's like, yeah, but 2022 they were back at those tracks. 2023 they were back at those tracks. Now 2024 again. So it kind of tells me, I don't know if they've actually made a big step, and it's just that the field is closer. So their strengths were coming out at certain tracks and making them look good. Plus the look kind of went their way at certain tracks as well, which upped the amount of progress it looked like. Because
I wouldn't say that. I mean, they were, I think it was either George or Lewis winning at Spa.
See, of course.
Silverstone was a McLaren fuck up.
My point is, though, at Spa, right? You can say look probably is the wrong word, but let's say the situation went in their favor. For example, at Spa, if Red Bull weren't taking a penalty there, Max would have won that race. If McLaren hadn't have fucked up, again, this is all if. I know Lando Norris haters love the word if, but if McLaren hadn't have screwed up kind of the start, their car was clearly strong enough near the end to be challenging, so I think they would have been in the mix. Obviously, Russell made that incredible play. Again, at Silverstone, McLaren threw away the win. They were a lot closer there, and that was definitely one of their stronger tracks. But like at Austria, that was two cars crashing
That
in
was just
front.
luck. That was
Yeah, that
blatant
was
luck.
two cars crashing in front. So my point is not that, you need to be in the right place to take advantage of situations,
Yeah.
obviously. But what I'm saying is, if they hadn't had those 3 wins, then the
Yeah.
peak would not look as good. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
you
Who's
have to
the
kind of take that into
I
account.
think the good thing about Mercedes was that the two drivers are very, very good.
They've got two
I
epic
mean,
drivers.
yeah,
One of them apparently
and
is
it's
only
been
good or
hilarious to
average.
see there are just and just a lot of people saying that McLaren now has the best driver lineup. I'm like, are you kidding me? There's a Lewis Hamilton and a George Russell on one side,
Yeah,
but again, it's
but
basically
Russell's only
recency
good though,
bias.
right?
Sorry?
Russell's only good. He's just average.
Yeah. Oh God,
I don't know how
fans.
people can say that. These are Hamilton fans saying this with a straight face, while Russell is beating Hamilton in every head-to-head. So my question is just always is like, so has Hamilton dropped off massively then? Because I don't think he has. So I think Hamilton's
He's
still
being
driving.
sabotaged. Okay,
Yes,
he
of
he was
course. Yeah,
sabotaged on
yeah.
Sunday as well
I suppose
because
we need to get into this race.
yeah. Let's talk about the race by the way. So that was a nice introduction. 10 minutes of yapping about random shit.
And if you
So
enjoyed it, subscribe.
yeah, and even if you didn't subscribe,
Yeah, yeah.
we don't mind. Anyways, so the race, I think for me, the best part of the race weekend, and I still think that was one thing that stood out for me was FP2, Lando Norris, the flying lap on soft tires that he did on his qualifying sim, brilliant.
Yeah.
Then just a minute later, I think it was just a minute later that Leclerc went out and did the same thing. And you could just tell that these two drivers are in different league from the
Yeah.
entire grid.
For
And
qualifying,
then by FP3, FP and qualifying, what you saw was again Red Bull had one major issue in the setup that they'd approached on Friday that they went for too soft suspension. Again, this is from Mark Hughes. He talked about it on the race. But the thing is, on Saturday, there was one thing that had changed compared to 2023. One thing was that the surface, which had been relayed, now once it was resurfaced, the bumps were gone, which was one of the bigger issues that
yeah.
bumps, by the way, on the track, not the curbs. So the bumps
Similar
were
in
gone, and
Baku as well.
yeah, and that made a major difference because now they can run the car much lower. Secondly, and I don't know how this has happened. Apparently, Max said that the aggressive curbs were not much of an issue here.
Hmm.
How I don't know, but apparently that's something that was actually a case for him.
Yeah, yeah.
When you add both of them, Red Bull, I wouldn't say Red Bull, I'd say Max, just shot up the order.
Yeah.
His laps in Q2 and Q3, onboards of those laps, amazing,
I would
amazing. That's
assume.
pure talent.
Do you know if they're resurfacing Austin? I
Yeah.
don't think so. They
Yeah,
are.
they did. They did.
Okay.
They
Oh,
did.
okay.
I mean, because MotoGP also has the race there, right? So, and MotoGP is a bigger issue when it comes to the bumps because they're
Yeah.
two-wheelers.
Yeah. Obviously.
So
yeah.
it gets resurfaced almost, I think, once every 2 years. It does get resurfaced because it's actually the entire thing is on a marshland.
Yeah.
So that the whole thing keeps on
Yeah.
getting
Because
displaced.
that was the one reason why both this track and Austin were big kind of. These are going to be problematic.
Anti Red Bull tracks,
Yeah.
ideally.
So that now, I mean, we'll talk about it in a few, but that now makes it very difficult for Lando to kind of make inroads on this championship, I think.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see that.
Yeah.
Anyways, so Q1, Q2, Q3. I think in Q3 for me, the biggest fumble, the biggest bottle job was Ferrari.
Mm-hmm.
First, I still don't understand how Sainz just blew it away. That crash was
What was it? He
weird.
said something over the radio, like something just went.
He said he
or-
didn't understand what happened,
Yeah.
and
In fairness, as well,
I
like
think I think that's become a bit of a Carlos Sainz trademark because he crashed in Baku. He said, "What happened?"
yeah.
And then he crashed. He said, "What happened?" You crashed, dummy.
In fairness, though, that
That's
was
what
like
happened.
that was on his preparation lap. He was just starting his qualifying lap.
He was
he
yeah. He
He
was
wasn't even
about
on a
to
hot
start.
lap.
No,
So
maybe
that is a
cold
very.
tires
I think like if that's Logan Sargent, you're like washed. What's going on here?
or
The
Stroll.
fact that Sainz, or Stroll, the fact that Sainz did it preparing, he wasn't even on a fast lap where you could say, right, tires gave out something. That's very odd. That's like
Yeah.
very odd for Sainz. So
Yeah.
I do think I would give the benefit of the doubt that clearly something happened.
Something was off.
There. Yeah, yeah.
And then Leclerc went out, and he also had, I think, somewhat similar issue that the tires were cold, and on the very first one, he went off, and the lap was fucked.
Yeah.
If Leclerc had done the same lap that he did in FP2 on Friday, he would have been on the front row.
Which
So, and
we'll
just
talk about
imagine, just the
we'll
same
talk
lap.
about the Lando thing in a minute because I just did a video that came out this morning about the title, and
Yeah.
we'll talk about it in a minute. But I think there's anyway, we'll get to it.
Okay. So, anyways, from all this, we had Lando getting pole position. We had Max, who was, I think, the biggest shocker. He was on the front row. Then we had another shock on the second row where both the Mercedes drivers were there. Then we had, I think it was Oscar, who had a poor
Yeah.
overall weekend here.
There's
Kind of
Hulkenberg,
was
Saracen.
half a second off, I think, to Lando. P6 was Nico Hulkenberg, another stunning race. Alonso P7, brilliant once
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
And then I think it was P8 was Yuki, P9, P10 was the Ferraris.
Yeah.
And then from there we went to the race, and the race was, I'd say, more or less straightforward, which is one of the most un-Singapore race that we've had.
I think
No,
the top 10 kind of started the race and finished the first lap in kind of the same positions they started.
no. Yuki lost position.
Right.
Albon was gone.
Colapinto
Sergio
dived up
jumped
the
up.
positions.
Sergio jumped a few. Actually, the whole thing happened because of Franco Colapinto. He made the dive bomb, and everyone took evasive action because
Can
of
I
that.
just say that was a brilliant move, and anyone who gives
Yeah.
Colapinto shit there, just go away because he made the apex, he slowed it down in time, he made the corner, he had a bit of a whip coming out of the corner, but
That's fine.
by that stage, everyone had kind of moved. I genuinely think the other drivers were just like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
And they all kind of had to bail out. He left room for them to come in alongside him.
There was enough, yeah.
Yeah, if they had tried to come alongside him when he had that snap, it may have gone wrong. But when
Yeah.
he was coming into the actual corner,
It
brilliant.
was fine. It was a
Absolutely
perfect
fantastic.
move. They were,
Yeah.
That's just.
Get him in the Red Bull.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Lawson
And
RB.
yeah, from that point onwards, I think surprisingly Lando held on to the lead. I had zero hopes that he would be able to do that.
Yeah.
But again, he got that done. From there, we had I'd say to an extent, there was some interesting bits where Leclerc was trying to overtake Alonso and Hulkenberg. He was stuck behind that. Mercedes, I find it hard to understand what the strategy was, where Russell basically lost around 10 seconds behind Lewis, who was on soft tires, and then Oscar was behind them. Again, as the race commenced, we saw how it unraveled. We had Oscar Piastri jumping both the Mercedes, finishing on the podium. Lando being around 20 plus seconds ahead of Max. Max being around 20 seconds ahead of Oscar.
Yeah.
Just completely weird. And again, Leclerc also had a good one. He finished P5.
Yeah.
Could have finished P4 if he was maybe a bit more aggressive or had more maybe tire life.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's more or less how the race went.
Okay.
Now let's talk
Ricciardo,
about
fastest lap.
Yeah,
we'll
that was
talk about
fun.
that later, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, first thing, Lando Norris. Ideally for me, it was. This might infuriate a few people.
This section will infuriate a few people.
Yeah,
Definitely. Yeah.
that was a statement-making performance, wasn't it? That was a performance of a
Domination.
world champion.
Statement made.
Yeah. Simply lovely.
Hey. Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
That was fantastic. Yeah.
I think for me the biggest thing was it all comes down to FP2. The way that car, the body language of the car when Lando drove it and when Oscar drove it, there was day and night difference.
Yeah.
And look, when you're smashing a driver like Oscar Piastri in the same car in same conditions and being almost, I think it was 4 or 5 tenths ahead of him in qualifying, and he had that gap throughout. It wasn't as if at some point Oscar was close to him, that maybe a bit in Q2, but maybe Lando held back a bit.
Yeah.
But it was clear that who was the number one driver in the team at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're doing that and then you're nailing the start, I mean, I think it was fine. The start was fine. There wasn't really anything. I think it was fine. There wasn't anything to talk about on that front.
Yeah.
But what happened later was, again, he knew that he could push the car as much as he wanted, and he just bailed. It
Yeah.
wasn't a case of him doing something that Carlos did last season, where he held up everyone.
He knew
Nothing
the
like that.
tires basically. They kind of very quickly realized that the tires were they could
Fine.
keep them in check. There was no problem, and there was he was pushing because I think they kind of know that Singapore can be a messy track,
Yeah.
and also you don't when you're you have to keep in mind as well. Like, there's a lot of people obviously going to talk about the fact that he bottled it under pressure because he had those two mistakes, right? Should he have slowed down and maybe taken it easy at points? Yeah, probably. And I think after that first stint where he was pushing to create the gap and he had that lockup. Now, apparently there was some change in wind direction. Something happened anyway where the breaking point wasn't exactly as expected. And
Yeah.
I love all the people who are like, oh, you completely bottled it there. And I'll be, yeah, I'm sure you're saying that from your sofa, eating your chocolate, not understanding that these cars work in very fine windows. But anyway, I'm not going to belittle people who listen to this podcast. You know who you are. I'm joking. But no, the point is, it's like these things can happen, and the fact that he saved that as well was insane. The other
Yeah.
drivers' reactions were nuts in the cool
The
down
cool
room.
down room.
Yeah, but the thing that people I think forget is that from I think it was lap 2, lap 3, they were on the radio to him, basically going, "Okay, we need you to as quick as possible pull out a 5-second gap." They were basically trying to make sure that no matter what happened, they could just control the situation. And Lando wanted to make sure that if anything happened, if there was any sort of yellow flags, anything at all, that McLaren had the exact time to fix that. And you know what? Given how shit McLaren has been with decision making this year,
Yeah.
I don't fault him for that. If I was in his situation, I'd probably want as big a gap as possible so that regardless of the shitstorm that they brew up, okay, I've got a gap. I'm fine. I can slot in. We can fix it. I can pit twice under a safety car if I need to. We'll be all right. So I think he was just pushing there. The brush off the wall, that was a silly move. I think at some point he was clearly pushing too much. I think he probably should have calmed down. But again, for people who say there's no pressure on here, the pressure is constantly on him. He's trying to win his first championship. The odds are against him. Of course he's going to be pushing. And if he wasn't, you'd be asking the other question, which is, he's not pushing hard enough. He's not ruthless enough. And tapping that wall there, if you look at a lot of the drivers, they brush that wall quite a bit because it's unsided as you kind of come across if you watch from the onboards. And that's what caught Russell out last year. And obviously Russell had a big accident.
And if you remember, before Russell crashed, Norris did touch the wall on that very same
Yep.
lap, and
I'm fairly
Russell
sure
just
Hamilton and Leclerc both touched it last year as well.
Yeah.
It's one of those corners where. So look, I know a lot of people dislike Lando and they're going to say terrible, whatever. I just have one thing to say because I think Oscar Piastri is getting to Norris's level. I think Oscar Piastri has been deservedly praised over the last 4 races, but this is the second race now where Oscar Piastri has been in the exact same car and Norris has absolutely dominated him. So if you're going to praise Oscar Piastri, you have to praise Norris as well. And if you're going to bash Norris for this, then I don't want to hear you fucking tell me how Oscar's the future champion. He should be number 1. Because I'm sorry, it logically doesn't make sense. Your argument could go out the window. And the last thing I'll say is, if you're going to tell me as well about, the little mess ups he made when he was dominating a race, drivers make these mistakes all the time. Verstappen in Hungary 2022, when he made that mistake and still won, we said it was impressive. So I think this deserves the same amount of impressiveness of, look at the mistake he made and he still won by 20 seconds. These things happen. Look at Verstappen in Spain 2022. Gust of wind changed, off the track, lost down to P4. People seem to think these cars are just kind of someone going on a Sunday drive. These drivers are pushing them to the limits all the time. The braking points change.
I think
I'm
it's
sick of the arguments.
I think it's probably a bit of a cognitive bias that your driver cannot make mistake, and the driver that you hate, even the smallest thing, it kind of pops up.
Mhm.
And look, after a point, you have to understand that. Look,
Can we make
Lando.
a quick bet as well? Do you guarantee if Oscar Piastri is leading the championship next year, I guarantee you he'll get all the exact same hate within 6 months. Like within 10 races, it will be the exact same.
Just give it 2 to 3 races, and if he beats Max in one of them, or maybe somehow has a collision with Max or Lewis or Leclerc, Just
I think
just
that's why
wait
it
for
bugs
it.
me, because I knew Verstappen was very, very good. He finally got the car to prove he was very, very good. Hamilton fans bashed him. I was defending Verstappen. And now the same Verstappen people who are like, this is ridiculous, and rightly so, were like, this is ridiculous, he's driving brilliantly, are now the same people bashing Norris for driving well. And it's kind of like, guys, come on, like, you've seen this film before.
You become what you hated. Basically,
Yeah, yeah. It's
that's the
really
whole thing.
frustrating. And
Yeah.
when it starts with Piastri, to be honest, I think that time I'm not even going to get involved because I'm just going to laugh. It's just like, okay, this is just ridiculous now.
Yeah, it's just the same cycle. And I used to predict this thing that this is going to happen, and a lot of Verstappen fans, they started following me on Twitter because of this thing. Because I'm a vociferous defender of any driver who gets unfairly blamed or is unfairly blasted. And a lot of times Verstappen was getting unfairly blasted for no fucking reason whatsoever, and I used to defend him. A
Yeah.
lot of Verstappen fans ended up following me, and I've had good relations with a lot of them. Now, when I'm talking against the fact that Lando is being unfairly judged, now those guys are, well,
I'm getting
I saw a
exactly the same.
massive outrage yesterday with a
I'm
lot
getting
of these
exactly the
things.
same, and I'm getting the same from like people, for example. It's twice now, to be honest, and this is why I just kind of laugh at it now, because when Hamilton and Mercedes had DAS and the Red Bull fans were calling cheating in 2020, I was very vocal about saying this isn't cheating, this is genius, like very
Yeah,
clever. So then when Red Bull were accused of cheating by Hamilton fans in 2021 for the flexi wing, I was like, no, fair play to them. Like, I mean, if they can get around the regulations and they can pass the test, then they should be allowed to keep it. Like, this is part of
yeah,
F1. And those people were like, yeah, exactly. And the same people now, when I'm like, if McLaren can find a way around the test, that's part of F1. And it's like,
precisely.
no, McLaren are cheating. So we're getting the same thing now where it's FIA are in bed with McLaren, just like before FIA were in bed with Red Bull. Before that was FIA or in. It's just the cycle is becoming so obvious. It's actually getting tiring now.
Yeah.
And I think I don't remember it from the past because I wasn't big on social media through Bernie's era. But I remember hearing it in the media constantly during Bernie's era.
It
About
used to be
different
there.
teams. Yeah.
I mean,
So
I was there. I've been on these forums for Orkut, then the FB groups and all these things since 2005, 2006.
mm,
So I've been at it. I've seen the whole thing. And it was the
yeah.
same nonsense, but
I watched
things
F1
don't change.
blissfully off of social media until kind of 2019. And for some
Yeah,
reason, I started talking about Formula One on social media.
yeah.
Worst decision I made. I should have stayed out of it, but sure, we're here now. You know?
Here we are now,
Yeah.
5 years later. Anyways, getting back to the racing and stuff, I think just one thing, championship implications. What do you think? Where does it put him? Because the gap was reduced by only 7 points.
Yeah.
So it's not like there was a massive
So
thing.
there's two ways to look at this. The simple fact is that if Red Bull have actually figured things out and they're not going to be kind of languishing in P4, P5 every weekend, right? Because look, you can give Max credit for one thing. I said last year he's the best driver since Schumacher. And the reason I said that is because if Max has a car that will dominate, he will dominate. There's no doubting that. Hamilton, even Vettel, as much as I love him, they had their off weekends. They weren't on it every weekend. Vettel was incredible at the end of 2013. There was points. But my point is, Schumacher was the last driver who just every single time he was in the
Perfect.
car, perfection. So if Max has a car that can challenge for P2 or even P1 or whatever, he will be there. So the problem with that is if Norris wins every single round and gets every fastest lap for the rest of the season, he will get 180 points, I believe it is, right? 180. So
174, I
it's
think.
it's 150 for the wins, so 25 by 6, so that's 150. 24 points for the sprints, so that's 8 by
174.
3. And then 6 points for fastest laps, so
Okay,
180.
you went full Monty. Okay.
But that's what I'm saying. If he gets the full amount, he ends on 459 points, right? If Max finishes P2 in every session behind him, Max finishes on 460 points, gaining 1 point a win. Thank you, Daniel Ricciardo. So the thing is, that is why now it looks really, really difficult. There is a silver lining, though, which is if this weekend, again, I use that Lando Norris hater word that everyone loves, if this weekend had played out as expected, realistically, given how Norris finished, Oscar should have been in P2. The Ferraris looked
Ferrari
really,
should
really
have been in
quick.
P3, P4.
or at least challenging Max. So if we get kind of where we expect the car to be over some of the races, especially because I expect Mercedes to be there in Austin, probably in Brazil as well, then it probably isn't as straightforward as that. But what is true is that it's harder than ever now for Norris to win the championship, and he's going to have to absolutely be perfect over the rest of the season. I don't think he needs to win everything, but he does need to be perfect so that when Max has a bad day, he's capitalizing on it. Because in Baku, if it wasn't for that yellow flag, realistically, he would have been probably P2, potentially challenging for the win.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say he's been on that form. And I think after Monza, he wouldn't have been giving Piastri an inch. So I think he would have been defending there. So he could have really capitalized on that. So at some point, the luck kind of has to swing in his favor, you would think. So it just depends. But I think unless Max is finishing P4, P5 and Norris is winning Austin, I think it's harder than ever now to see him win the championship. But
Yeah. I think for me, it comes down to the Austin upgrade.
yeah,
If
definitely.
that upgrade works the way Marco has been bigging it up, then maybe we are in a situation where you can forget about the championship. Because in that
They were on a
case,
flexi wing front wing this weekend as well. I think I saw a video.
no,
of
that was Ferrari.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So
Again, I don't think they used it in the race, but they did try it in FP1. I didn't keep a track of what happened afterwards.
yeah,
But again, we have to understand one thing. It's not a silver bullet.
that's the problem.
Yeah,
It's how that interacts with the entirety of the rest of the
precisely.
car. So yeah.
Yeah. And who knows how it happens. So really, that's not neither here nor
But
there.
yeah, but getting back to, you're right on the upgrades. Like it really
Yeah.
does depend on.
The Austin upgrade, if it is working and if Max is comfortable in the car, I think that's it. I think the title
Me
battle
too.
is over.
I just think,
And
like I said, that the thing is with Max, you know, if he has the car, he'll get the job done. There's
yeah,
no question on that. So
yeah.
it's really
And
down to what Max does. Yeah.
ideally, I think there's one thing people don't understand when if I'm saying that Lando is doing a great job, it doesn't mean that he's better than a Max Verstappen. It means he belongs in that category, and on his
Yeah.
day he can beat Max.
Yeah.
And again, while it might be hard to swallow, that's just facts, and it has happened even before. The point is, if there are 6 races left and Max has a decently competitive car, if it is even the second best car, he will more or less finish second every race, every time, might even win a race, because that's how good he is.
Yes.
As you said, the best driver since Michael Schumacher, and I don't think there should be any, again, Lewis Hamilton fans will have a different view, but I don't think there's actually an argument on that.
Yeah. I called him the best driver since Schumacher. I got so much shit for that. Even though I completely clarified what I meant by that. I was like, just he is a driver who, when he has the machinery, he's on it. So you can't give him an inch. And that's where the thing is, though, he wasn't that driver before 2022, in my opinion. And this is the thing about F1. Like I think that driver
I'd say he was the driver
I think
since
it was
2019.
in him, but I think he had some edges. Okay, here's the way I'll put it, because you're right. There's a way I need to phrase this. I need to clarify that. The pace and the aggression and the want to just perfect every weekend was there, but he still had a lot of rough edges that I think 2021 kind of planed off. You know, that going through that 2021 season basically got rid of those kind of edges off of him. We saw a bit of a flare up of that in Hungary this year.
Do you think the approach that Max Verstappen had in 2022 or 2023 would have worked in 2021 against a Lewis Hamilton? Or do you think that the fact that Max went into every race with just one motive of beating Lewis in that weekend, and if it meant dive bombing him into turn one, he was willing to do it? And that made Lewis change his game.
You know what? I think his attitude in 22 and 23, I think he would have won the championship sooner. Because I
don't think so.
I think he took some risks that he didn't need to throughout that season.
Yeah, of course. Silverstone is one of the examples.
But Silverstone was Lewis's fault, but he could have very easily See, it's easier said than done because the other thing we need to take into account is at that time as well, the cars were different in the point of when you were following, you had very little time to catch. Whereas in 2022, you had that situation where the dirty air wasn't there, so they knew they could back out and still
Yeah.
get back and fight again. So it's hard to say. Like there's a
But
lot
there
of
was another
ifs and
bigger
buts.
thing, right? He was fighting against Lewis Hamilton, who had not lost a title since 2016, and he
And
had that aura about him.
the
So
other thing that you need to keep in mind as well is that it was the end of a regulation set, and Red Bull had no idea what the other teams were doing. So
yeah,
for all he knew, that was his one and only chance at the title.
yeah,
And I think that's where the mistakes are made, and that's where the pressure is. And I think you have to look at it from Norris's perspective that he's been in F1 for what's this, his sixth season now, isn't it? 2019 he started.
2018 or 19 he came in. So yeah,
So I
five
think
six
it's his
years.
sixth season. Yeah.
Yeah,
You have to keep in mind that he knows how quick things can change in F1. Look at the start of the season. So he's looking at this probably in his mind of, if I don't get this perfect and I don't fucking execute every weekend and do everything perfectly, this could be my one and only chance to win a title. Like his teammate was Daniel Ricciardo a couple of years ago. He's seen how you can go from this guy's a future champion to this guy isn't getting offered a job next year. So
yeah.
I think the thing
Mid-season
is,
dropped. Second
yeah.
time in his career.
So like
Wow.
I think that all of these drivers, and especially like it's easy to say, like, you know, oh, Max is a different driver and so on. But I think he is, because I do think part of it is that pressure dropped off. You know, it's not the same thing. But also he had the championship in the bag. Anything else now is a bonus. And
That's
I
how he
do,
treats
you
it
know,
actually.
yeah,
Which
yeah,
is a
that
nice, actually a refreshing thing. He has a different approach compared to probably a Vettel, Alonso, and Hamilton did, who
They've
had
wanted
this
the multiple
benchmark of 7
championships.
championships and which they were pursuing like
He
anything.
doesn't treat it that way. And
Yeah.
I think that's where people need to kind of stop. They need to kind of think back to 2020, 2019, 2021, where Max was making mistakes. And, you know, the reason for that is, like, Max is a brilliant driver, but Max also had years in machinery that could win races. Not all the time, but it could win races. So he had time, especially
He ran at the front.
and he was in a Red Bull. Red Bull had gone through this with Vettel and so on. He was at a team that knew how to win, that knew how to train up a driver. All of these things
Yeah.
are there. Norris doesn't have that. So he's learning on the fly now how to drive at the front with a team that doesn't know how to drive at the front. So that's why I think I defend him quite a bit, because like Piastri deserves absolutely incredible credit for just coming in and getting the job done.
Yeah.
But you need to keep in mind that Norris is going through a big transition phase. Norris didn't come into a team the same that kind of Oscar did. So,
Yeah,
you know,
that's
people
true.
forget these drivers are humans, I think, sometimes, unfortunately. You know,
Yeah.
because Schumacher wasn't human. I think that's why.
That's the problem. And I think honestly even Max has shown sometimes
is-
that he's not. He's
Max
actually
has become
not.
a robot over the last couple of years, which is
Yeah.
it's been incredible
The
to watch.
2023 season was robotic. It was a bit like
Yeah.
he turns up, he wins, he goes home, that's it. That's the entire story.
I also
And that's
think one
how
of
it
the
was
big
the case.
problems now is we seem to be in a society where if you praise Verstappen, for example, in the past, it was automatically seen as a dig at Hamilton. And
Yeah.
I think we need to get out of that mindset where you should be able to go, yeah, Norris is driving fucking incredible, and that doesn't
Yeah.
need to be Verstappen shit. Like, those aren't the same thing. You know,
I
you
think
can do both.
there's this actually meme where I think it was, I don't remember the person's name who actually put it out. He said that this is a post and I'm going to make it about Lewis in some manner possible.
Yeah.
And it happens so many times on random posts I've seen. But AD 2021, but Lewis this, but I've said, come on.
I
And-
do it all the time to wind people up. So
Yeah.
I know I'm
You're
aware
in the same.
I'm part of the problem, and I'm aware of it. But I just figure
Yeah.
I can't fix the problem, so I might as well enjoy it.
And yeah, and I think coming back to Singapore, I think for me one thing that stood out, and again Max deserves all the credit because those laps were pure talent, and I think Singapore brings it out of people a lot of times that drivers, and I think I shared this stat regarding qualifying where Lando had almost a half-second gap, Max had a second per lap gap, Alonso had a second, well, it's Stroll. Hulkenberg had that, and I think there were a couple of others who also had major gaps to the teammates, and it was basically a testament of how drivers or how teammates are making difference. I think that's something that Singapore brings. So somewhere there were good things as well.
Yeah.
And what stands out for me was, I think, the Red Bull's turnaround in this weekend. It was a bit of a get out of jail card that they had, because if it had not been the case, I was worried, because I thought it would, and even Max on Friday or on Thursday in the press conference, he said that I'm hoping I make it to Q3 or something on those lines.
It could have
And
easily gone the way of Perez. I mean, to be
yeah,
honest, the way Perez's race went, I was kind of or weekend went, should I say? That's kind of what I was expecting Red Bull. I figured Max would get more out of it and kind of finish in P7, P8. I
yeah,
was kind of expecting a tough race. So
that's what we predicted, right? I think you
yeah,
had a prediction of P7, P8, and I was maybe a bit more optimistic. I had him at P5.
yeah,
So yeah, that's
but
what we expected. But
impressive. Yeah.
yeah,
It's
and I
just
think
another weekend, like we've just been saying, where if you give Max the car, he'll put it there, and then it's out of his hands. It's up to everyone else to see where they go. He
precisely,
will do the job. That's all he can do.
yeah,
You know.
and I think he's said this thing a lot of times, that on my end I'm doing the job. Now it's not in my hands, and
Yeah.
that's how it's been. Because if the car sucks, then it sucks. You can't do anything more than that.
That's
I think
one of the
one thing
brilliant
for
points
me,
of this,
honestly, yeah, I think one thing for me that actually stood out for Red Bull this weekend was a refreshing change. And I think I think it might be a bit premature, but there were still moments. Of course, how they managed the Daniel Ricciardo situation is another story. We'll get to that bit later. But as a team, Red Bull, Horner, Marco, for maybe I think the first weekend since probably 2023, they acted like a unit.
Yeah.
The way the whole the rear wing was disbanded, you had Marco coming out and he made the statement that, okay, now the rear wing is gone, now it's time for the front wing.
Yeah.
And you had Horner backing him up. Then you went to qualifying and you had Red Bull basically bringing the car alive, being almost perfect when it comes to the timing of when the car should go out and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was quite impressive to see that there is still life left in that team. It's not really gone completely under.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know how the whole thing changes when they go to Austin, how it evolves, because that is an entirely different story. But at least for a weekend, one thing that stood out for me was, even in probably in its worst shape, Red Bull is still a better operational team than a Ferrari.
Yes.
And maybe, I don't know if Mercedes will put in that category, but at least a Ferrari, even in this condition, current state, which is remarkable for me.
I still think Mercedes is up there definitely. I think where Mercedes falls off, to be honest, is the aerodynamic
Raises. Yeah.
the car, and also sabotaging Hamilton. But yeah. So look, I think it's a good sign for them, and they kind of need it now. I do wonder if kind of that dropping out of being constructors leaders kind of made the point where Horner and Marco and kind of the team realized, all right, well, we can either tear this team apart continually, or we can put it back together. And at some point, it's going to be too late to put it back together. So maybe let's start rebuilding now, and figuring
Probably.
this out. Maybe Horner as well has conceded that, look, Marco's not going to be around much longer anyway, so why am I having these, this fight?
It doesn't make any sense, right? And I think at some point you have to understand. I think it would have been an alarming thing.
It's time to unite against the key enemy here, Jos Verstappen. But yeah, it's good to see.
Happy that he's away. I'm very happy he's away.
I think it's good to see as well, because it clearly, maybe it's come about from the realization that, look, the performance is kind of not out of our hands, but there's going to be a struggle now of next year. The other teams have caught up. These regulations are limited. There's only so much we can do. And then we go into the deep unknown of 2026.
Yeah.
And that all means that we could lose Verstappen, and we've basically pissed away our entire junior program for the last 5 years. So I think it's probably time to get on board with each other and sort things out, because there's only, I don't know when we'll talk about the Lawson thing in a while, I guess, and the Ricciardo thing in a while. But I think it's just time for them to get their house in order.
Yeah.
Because they're
it's been too long. Look, Marco is not going anywhere until the end of 2026. That's what his contract says.
Yeah.
Horner is probably not going anywhere. And if you know that both of these guys are going to stay together, then better work as a team. Because what's the point? It's at some
They're on the
again
verge
we
of
are
third in the constructors. Like
yeah,
that's
most probably they are going to finish third. I doubt that
yeah.
unless the Austin upgrade where a lot of things depend. If that works, we see how the whole thing can turn around. Plus, Ferrari will start to struggle in Austin. It's not their favorite track, and the car shouldn't really work that well there.
Yeah.
I think still, it's at least maybe we are being a bit premature with the whole thing, and who knows? In this 3 week break, we end up hearing maybe Marco has been fired, or Horner has been fired, or maybe maybe Hannah Schmitz leaves. You never know. She's the only one left of the only pillar left probably. Everyone else is gone.
Yeah, for all we know, they just close down next week. They're like, yeah, we're done now. Thanks for all the years, guys. It's been good.
Yeah, the farewell was not for Ricciardo, it was
honestly,
for us.
With the way this season goes, I would not be surprised if we come into the next race with Max having signed for Mercedes with Helmut going for him next year. Russell is over with Horner in Red Bull. You know, I would not put anything past this season.
I did think so, but I think sanity has prevailed, and maybe it has come from Max, who realized that losing the title that is in your hands is probably a foolish thing. So maybe secure this first, and then we'll see what happens in the future.
I also think maybe he's had a look at the same thing I have, which is Mercedes are constantly... Mercedes for the last 3 seasons now have just been peaked or nowhere. That's just the constant of them, is they're either really, really good or they're nowhere. And unfortunately, you can't win a championship that way. So I think the
biggest drawback, if Toto has to sell Mercedes as a team to Max, is a Mercedes powered team is going to win the world championship this season, and it's not going to be the Mercedes works team. So make of it what you will. It's basically turning Mercedes into what Renault was for Red Bull in the earlier days, where Red Bull was winning all the titles while Renault was just an afterthought. You don't want that if you're a works team, but that's where the whole thing actually ends up. Anyway,
so a lot of sabotage in Hamilton now, I guess, or
should we first talk about Ferrari? I think let's stick with Mercedes. Let's stick with Mercedes first, because we've been on that flow. Okay, Lewis Hamilton starting the race on soft tires. First of all, what was your view that he started the race on soft? Was it a bad decision, good decision? What?
Look, I think the thing is, right, Hamilton has an engineering degree, an honorary one. He basically, according to all of his fans at the start of the season, designed the car.
Okay, for a minute, leave the fans aside. Just
No, look, I think the thing is, obviously there was only one other driver who went on the softs at the start. That was Daniel Ricciardo, right? Both of whom are washed and leaving F1 soon. I'm going to be serious now. Be serious. I think that Hamilton and the guys sat down in the garage. Hamilton realized he finally had a car that he was kind of a little bit comfortable with, because of obviously how qualifying went. And I think he very quickly realized as well that track position is everything here. And it was obvious. The only reason you go on softs is because you've got 2 faster cars lining up ahead of you, and you want to try and jump them at the start and take off into the lead for a little bit, and then have the track.
Or just hold them up and just basically do what Sainz did last season.
How difficult it would be to overtake, and it didn't work out. And I think Hamilton was clearly on board with that, because there's no way they said to him, "We're putting you on softs," and Hamilton just went, "Well, I don't know what works." Like, he's not a moron. He's been in the sport long enough. He knew exactly what the plan was. And I think he gambled it all to go for first, and it didn't work out, and that's fine. Unfortunately, he then also threw the team under the bus repeatedly. And they did pit him too early, I think. But I think they have all the data.
They had to pit, because if he was not pitted at that time, Oscar was right behind them, and it didn't really make any sense. The biggest in my view, the biggest dumb shit that they did was they used Lewis as an anchor for George, which should not have been the case.
Sabotage.
George, once Lewis pitted and he was out of the way, George was at best a couple of tenths off per lap from Max.
Yeah.
And you don't end up in that. And if that had happened, if they had switched the cars early, George maybe could have been able to, hold off Oscar later in the race, because he would not have lost those 10 seconds. He
Yeah.
lost those 10 seconds being stuck behind his teammate for no reason. And
Yeah.
these are some things that I think what Mercedes did was they tried to keep their hands off the strategy. Plus, they didn't want another letter coming in, which still
Well,
might.
they
But
got one from me. I've sent one to every. No, I haven't. But yeah, maybe there is that, and
yeah,
like, maybe there's some truth to like what Newey said in that that podcast that got him a lot of hate.
80 2021, they've still not moved on from that.
I'm not saying that specifically, but I'm saying that if they took so long, as he said, to kind of move on from it, maybe there is a point where maybe Mercedes do worry too much about perception and things like that. Because
They do.
There's one thing you can say about Red Bull. Red Bull do not give a shit about the perception. If they did, Horner would not be there. Simple as. So,
By the way, neither would Marco.
No, Mark.
The kind of shit he's said in the last decade.
Isn't it hilarious that the Mercedes fans who kind of have really hated Marco for a long time,
Yeah.
are kind of now happy to, wouldn't it be great to get Marco over?
No,
even
wait.
Toto. It's like,
We don't
what are
have
you
any
saying?
Mercedes fans. We only have either Lewis Hamilton fans or Verstappen fans. Mercedes does not have any fans.
That's true, yeah. That's true.
I mean,
yeah.
that's the biggest failure and the biggest probably blot on Toto Wolff's legacy, that he didn't build Mercedes the brand. He built Lewis Hamilton the brand,
Yeah.
which
I
is the
think
biggest
Helmut
failure for him.
Marko, the biggest critical thing I could say of Helmut Marko now is he can't
exists.
possibly get. Yeah, but he's also thrown Colapinto out of a chance at Red Bull in the future, because he's said that all South Americans are lazy. So that's it, screwed.
Oh, God.
But yeah, I think that Hamilton decision was very odd, and not letting Russell pass straight away was very odd as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is for Formula One, and I know fans don't like this, but it's a hyper-competitive sport that is ruthless. And the moment they saw that George had more pace and Hamilton was falling off,
Yeah.
and that George had even a sniff of going up and chasing after Verstappen or keeping Piastri at bay, whatever it was on their list, they should have done that. And I would expect Mercedes to do that. They know these things pretty quickly, and that's a very McLaren-esque, Ferrari-esque kind of screw up on their part.
Stupidity, honest. I think that. Yeah.
I can live with the Hamilton decision to go on softs. If I was a Mercedes fan, a Hamilton fan, I would be saying, yeah, fair enough. I mean, Hamilton doesn't really seem to care about third and fourth places. So if he was going for, we're going to try to go for first, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I have much
even
more
if it's
credit
not
for that.
first, he would have been in P2, and I don't think Max would have jumped him on track.
No. So
in
I
terms
think
of
I think
overtaking.
all credit for trying it. Like, fair play.
Yeah.
Who cares about a P3, P4? Go for first. Go for the win.
Yeah.
That's what I expect from Lewis Hamilton. But it was a
Precisely.
bit odd of, like, straight away, it was like, why did they put him on softs? And it was like, look, whatever.
He's
about
not a
pitting
2-year-old
early-
child. That's
that's
the
the
whole
thing.
bit.
That's the thing. Whatever about pitting early, you could say, okay, maybe they made a decision. All of these things you could say. But starting on softs, that was clearly a gamble that Hamilton was in with. Because
Yeah.
if he wasn't, he would have said it straight away. And he didn't. So he clearly was in on that. And the softs fell off.
Yeah. I mean, I really don't like this thing. Look, a team and a driver is the same thing, and I think maybe it's, again, I'm basically preaching to the choir, because no one, the driver fans will never understand this thing. Even the Verstappen fans have done the same nonsense. It's basically blaming Red Bull, which was what Hamilton fans used to do. So,
Do you know
anyways,
as
moving
well,
on from that, I
Russell-
think
Russell had a setup issue with tires changing between free practice and the race. Immediately on X, it was a skill issue for Russell, basically, immediately.
yeah,
which
and
I
he
thought
still
was-
ended up. I think he was 1800s slower than Lewis. Just imagine. I think one thing that Mercedes will, and maybe Toto is not being explicit enough when it comes to this, but I think Mercedes would do well in terms of a burden being lifted off the shoulders when Lewis is gone.
Yeah.
Because in the last 3 years, it has become a lot of coddling, a lot of explanations in the media, and you don't want that in a racing team. It's become a bit of a burden for them, and maybe when Lewis is gone, a fresh blood in Kimi Antonelli comes in, and the team can just start focusing on the fact that
It's
if
a big
X
marker
driver
that this is
beats
the-
Y, it could happen.
And it's a big marker that, like, the next generation has started now. Like,
Yeah.
the old generation is over. This is a new team. Maybe it will be
I think it's
refreshing.
not even that. It's just that I think Lewis comes with a lot of baggage. And Fred Vasseur is going to realize it next season, because if there are 5 or 6 races in the beginning where Leclerc outqualifies him, and if he ends up comprehensively outqualifying him, the questions will be back. And it's just and by the way, all the love that Leclerc is getting from and Ferrari is getting from the Hamilton fans, just
it's
wait
gonna
for it.
end very
2025
quickly.
is going to be fun on that front.
Yeah, it's
at
going
least.
to end very, very quickly as soon as they put him on intermediates in a dry race or something.
And I laugh my ass off because
I laugh because
I've seen
we
it
all saw
happen
it
to
coming.
Kimi.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen to so many drivers, and
Listen,
I want these guys to feel the pain at least once.
As you know, at the start of the season, we talked about this. I was confidently like, "Oh my god, Fred Vasseur actually turning this around," and I was like, "This is insane." And you know what? After having my heart broken for so many seasons with Vettel, to the point where I kind of just gave up in
2018.
2019. No, after
I gave up in 2018.
I gave up in
after
2018
Germany.
on
I gave up. Done.
It was after 2019 when the whole scandal came out, and I went, "Oh, right, this is just." And then 2020 was a nightmare, and I just kind of went, "Yeah, it's probably best Vettel is leaving." And I got excited about Aston for a while before that was crushed. But I think like I got a bit excited earlier this year, and then realized, oh, yeah, Fred can only make so many changes, and I'm watching all
And he
these
doesn't
Hamilton
have all the
fans
power.
getting excited about Ferrari and stuff, and I'm like, guys, don't do this to yourself. You're just asking for pain. Like, just if Fernando Alonso couldn't change it, and Vettel couldn't change it, I don't care who you think Hamilton is. He's not going to change it. Like, it's not going to, especially at the end of his career. Maybe if it was 2013 and he was going in, even then it would be a challenge, but he's not going to change it. Like, it's just not.
It's not happening.
If anyone is, it's Leclerc,
Probably.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality of the whole thing, because Leclerc has been there long enough.
And he's got time on his side still.
Yeah. And by the way, now I think coming to Ferrari, after this triple header of sorts, it's not been exactly a triple header, but these 3 races of sorts, what do you think the mood would be at Ferrari? Should they be happy? Should they be disappointed? What should be the takeaway?
They should be happy because they seem to have gotten over some issues. But you know what? It's kind of similar to me with Mercedes over the last 3 seasons. Ferrari has done this now for fucking 16 seasons. Just this constant copium of euphoria at the start of a season, a really kind of middle, if not a bad middle, and then kind of we're back at the end of the season, so next season's going to be ours. And I'm kind of just, same with Mercedes now as it's been similar. I'm kind of just like, I'm not really sure how to feel about Ferrari anymore. And I'm sure internally, if I'm seeing it, surely they must be thinking it as well, of like, we need a consistent season. I think like Red Bull, at some point that has to change. Remember, Red Bull had kind of always was it a peak at the end of the year and just never could carry it into the next season? Like
17, 18.
That went on.
16, 17, 18.
And then finally,
and 19 as well, yeah.
Yeah, and then in 2020 they had a peak at the end of the season and they did carry it in. Maybe at some point this will change and Ferrari will carry it into 2025 and Hamilton will get beaten to the championship by Leclerc. But it will be, I think at some point it has to change. But like, I think
there's one major difference between what Mercedes is doing right now and even what Red Bull did at the time. If there was even a slight sniff of a win, they'll get it. Be it a Mercedes or be it a Red Bull, they would win that race if they were even within a 10th of an opportunity of that. I think Ferrari should have won 3 out of 3 races.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming out of this triple header with just 1 win.
Yeah,
I think Monza they won the race with the
Norris,
gamble
basically.
but still the car was good enough. In Baku, it was entirely slightly complacent from Leclerc as well and from the team as well. They basically Oscar snatched that win from them by just his brilliance.
Yeah.
And I think this weekend they should have won. I think the pace was there. Leclerc's second stint was stunning. At moments he was around 2 to 2.5 seconds quicker than Lewis, and I think a couple of seconds quicker than George. That's mind-blowing pace, and he was faster than even Lando. Lando was probably managing, but he was, I think, on 2 laps older tires than Oscar, and he was much faster than Oscar.
Yeah.
You don't need more evidence than that.
If they hadn't had issues in qualifying, that's why I said earlier, I think they would
Yeah.
have been very much in the mix.
And it's so infuriating because if Leclerc
Because
swept
you're a
these
Norris
3
fan.
races,
Yeah.
imagine if he swept these 3 races, he was in the title battle. He was right in the thick of things.
Yeah.
How many points has he left on the table? Plenty. 10, 15, 20, something like this. You leave 20 points on the table in 3 races, and this is what Red Bull and Mercedes do that. He would be, I think, probably level with Lando.
So he's 34 points behind Lando. So he would have been a lot closer.
He would have gained 20, but again, Lando would have lost 5. So yeah, something on those lines.
They would have been,
but it would be a major shift.
Yeah. To the point where you would have had 6 races where it's like, oh, okay, right. If Verstappen has a DNF here, either of these 2 guys are in this battle.
That's what it, and you know, that's why I always think that maybe Ferrari is still not the complete package.
I do wonder, actually, random side note, given we've had 8 races with no safety car, I wonder if Formula One's building itself up for 6 races of absolute bedlam and chaos. Because you know the way we always have those races where they're really dull, and then what are the next laps,
3 races, by the way?
Austin.
Yeah.
Then
Mexico?
Austin, Mexico, Brazil. Yeah, are the next 3.
So then Austin might not. Frankly, Austin and Mexico have shit races most of the time.
Yeah.
So
the Austin race can be fun. Like there has been,
but strategically, it's not much of an on-track action.
Mexico's always dull.
Usually it's the first lap where someone crashes
Mexico's
or someone
really
pulls off a move.
It's like I love when the Mexican, even here, like I'm kind of 400, like I'm 5 hours drive from Mexico City where the race is on, right? And even here, you see people excited about GP. Like people do kind of come alive for the Grand Prix.
Checo is a star in Mexico.
It's a big thing here. So I have to be careful not to be killed when I insult them. But but Mexico, it's such a weird difference where you have this huge, incredible party atmosphere of Mexico and the most dull race in the world. You know, it just doesn't add up together.
I think ideally, Pirelli, you know what they should do? Just bring in the softest compounds.
Yeah.
Just do that. Have a 4 pit stop race. Just do it for one, just for fun, just for funsies.
Switch off DRS, so there's no DRS trains.
No, they won't even overtake, man. That's the only way they overtake these days.
Oh, but then put a chicane halfway down the straight. You know,
probably do something like that. Make it fun.
You know what they need to do, to be honest, is
change that stadium section ideally.
That as well, but the really simple change that I don't understand why they don't do this immediately is just do what they do at Brazil, which is just put it in that when you have the DRS in one area and you overtake the pit straight, you have another activation zone so that when they come into the second, the other driver gets so they can fight back. Yeah. Because in Mexico, you get ahead and then you get a second helping of DRS. It makes no sense. That one change, I think, would make such a difference.
That's the dumbest rule that is there, actually. It's there in multiple... I think one of the reasons behind it is viability. Apparently, you can't put multiple detection points in such close vicinity. Something like that.
But they do it in Brazil. It doesn't make any sense. Like, they have the exact same...
Brazil. Yeah.
Because Brazil, you come down the pit straight...
But there's the Senna S, right?
The Senna S, you've got another detection point there. And in Mexico, you have the exact same. You come down the point, you've got a chicane to go through, and then you come out. So it's the exact same.
No, there are. That's a different. It has a different detection point, right? I think it has a different detection point.
There is no detection point, though. That's my point. There's one before the main.
You're saying it's a double DRS? I think.
Mexico,
I don't think so.
In Mexico, it's a double DRS.
I'm taking your word for it.
Yeah, but you get the detection coming into the pit straight, and then whoever has DRS on the pit straight, they get it again for the second point. There's no second detection point. In Brazil, there's a detection point in the Senna S's, so you come down the pit straight, and then you get it again. In Mexico, there's not, and I just don't. I've never understood the decision.
You sure about that?
Yeah, check it if you want. I'll go on my rant for a minute while you check it, which is, I wonder if this season will be like. There's been so many races in the past, right, where it's been dull. And all of the time, whenever there's a really dull race, I always think to myself, the last 10 laps here could be fucking incredible. Because sometimes we get those races where it's like nothing happens. You're almost thinking, I might just see what's on TV, and then
We
boom,
had
red
it in
flag.
Austria, right?
Yeah, like those sorts of things where it's like boom, red flag, safety car, crash, something. Abu Dhabi 2021. You get all these things where it just completely changes. And I do wonder if we've had 8 races now where there's been no safety car, and the
Yeah.
next 6 are going to be absolute chaos. Like red flags, safety cars, car fires. Roman Grosjean somehow crashes.
I want multiple. I just what well, there are.
Are you still looking this up?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you just get the
Oh,
circuit map.
okay. You're right.
Yeah. So
You're right.
I've never understood that. It doesn't make any sense to me. Because one of the beautiful things about Brazil is the car overtakes down the pit straight, and a lot of the time you see the drivers even strategically kind of letting them pass, knowing
Yeah.
they'll get the second helping, and then into turn 4 you can get them back. And Mexico literally has the exact same setup. All they have to do is put a detection point in. Like
They could. I think
maybe
you're
they'll
right.
do it this year because they're adding and changing the DRS constantly. So maybe
They
this
will
year
increase the length for sure. I mean, they can. They have the scope for it.
hopefully
That
then
straight is huge.
Yeah, hopefully then they just they fix that this year because that would make a huge difference. I think. If you
I
could fight
guess so.
back.
I guess so. It should help and make tires softer.
Especially because you've got
Have
2 braking
multiple
points
stops, two to three stops. We want 2 to 3 stops, not even 1 or 2 stops. But yeah. Anyways, moving on from Ferrari, I think there was one thing Okay, so should we talk about it or should we wait for it? The whole Daniel Ricciardo saga.
No, let's just talk about it because it's
First,
really-
let's talk about the fastest lap before we get to that.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
I got a lot of shit for that.
If they don't like it, make a rule.
No, not that bit. Do you think? Okay, yeah. So first, I'll tell you what I felt. For me, it was a bit too blatant.
Mhm.
In terms of, again, there are going to be a lot of Max Verstappen fans going crazy in this thing in the comment section, and you should drop a comment that we cannot prove it.
Yeah.
But the point is, of course, we cannot prove it. But there was a sense of Daniel Ricciardo pitting, going for a fastest lap, and takes a point from Lando. If there was a scenario where Max Verstappen had the fastest lap, would Daniel Ricciardo be allowed to do something like that?
Probably not. I mean,
That's the
almost
thing.
certainly not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the problem what comes here is if we are in the last race of the season and Max is winning Lando is winning the championship by 1 point because of the fastest lap, and then you have this stunt pulled, and that's how he loses the title with a second team. It ideally, look, I have no issues with what's the name now, V carb being on the
Yeah.
grid.
Yeah.
My main concern is they should act autonomously. There should not be a case of Red Bull influencing it to such an extent that it becomes a factor during the race.
Yeah.
That's where things get a bit murky for me. And I think Red Bull was a bit too blatant this time around. So yeah.
I think that the problem is like there's no rule against it, first of all, so they can
Yeah.
do it. Like they could have literally come over the radio and
They
said,
can
They
yeah,
could
yeah,
have
they
come
can.
over the radio and said, "We're gonna help Max out here. Go take the fastest point." And there's no rule against that. So there
Yeah.
needs to be a clear rule against that, so that at least there's a rule potentially broken, even if they didn't call it, so that they can investigate it. And that way, if they find any evidence that the team even talked about it, or you get a situation where, like Nelson Piquet in 2008, decides a while later to go, "Oh, by the way, they told me to crash." Then you've got evidence and you can investigate it. Because even if Ricardo come out now and said, "Yeah, I did it on purpose. The team told me to do it,"
Doesn't
like,
make a difference.
no
right?
rule. So they could easily just put a rule in. So the thing is, owning 2 teams, I'm not against it. I think they just should have some clear rules to say, right, if you own 2 teams, then there should be some policing. Because the problem is as well as if you're going to draw the line with owning 2 teams, which is the most clear and obvious example, then you also need to take into account that, well, Mercedes supplies 4 teams with engines, which gives them a lot of political influence. Mercedes put their drivers in Williams, which meant, say, for example, in 2021, if Russell got involved in that in any way, you could say, well, did someone tell Russell to kind of
Oh, okay.
block?
You're talking about
know what I
Imola.
mean? Yeah. So my point is, like, you could go down all of these paths. The problem is you either make a decision where you say that they can't own 2 teams, which I personally am like, well, I mean, to be fair, if there was a decent buyer for that, I'd want it to go somewhere else. But I also don't want the team to just disappear because that's not fair either. So just make some clear rules. But I also think fundamentally, that's such a stupid fucking fastest lap rule anyway. If you can't get the point, then you shouldn't be able to take it. Like, that's a really simple. This is like the
Yeah,
Mexico
only the
DRS
top
thing.
10. And you know what?
It's
What's the
stupid.
funniest part in all this is in F2, Formula 2, by the way. Unless you're in top 10, you cannot
It's
take the
such a
fastest lap away.
simple rule. That's what I'm
And
saying.
they have
If you can't take
implemented
the
it
rule,
in Formula 2. They have not implemented it in Formula 1, and it
yeah.
makes me go
It's just
nuts.
it's
How
like what I was saying
fucking
about
stupid is
Mexico.
that?
It's like what I was saying about Mexico DRS. There's the perfect example. Mexico's like, oh, how do we spice up this race? Literally, the next race has a fix for you, and you're not implementing it. So
I
if
think the biggest
Formula
problem
2,
behind it is misplaced priorities. For FIA, the more important thing is people. The oh shit.
people cursing, yeah, but like,
No, I was actually going to talk about another thing as well.
right?
The one for which you got a lot of backlash. I steered away from that shit.
Oh, the racism thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we will get there. We'll get
yeah,
there as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Anyways,
But yeah,
now
look,
coming to
all they have
first.
to do, just the last word on that, with that rule, same as F2, just simply change it. If you're in 11th place and you, like, you know what? If you have the fastest lap and then you overtake and get into P10, sure, give them, like, it's a very easy thing of, like,
Yeah, yeah.
if you finish the race with the fastest lap in the top 10, you get the point.
Yeah,
If
it's
you don't,
yours. Yeah,
because the fastest lap's not awarded till after, like, till the race ends anyway. So
yeah,
someone in 18th could take it and then miraculously get into P9 and
yeah,
get the fastest lap. But it's simple. Like, if Daniel Ricciardo finished the race with the fastest lap but in P18, okay, well, he doesn't get it. The next fastest lap down, which was Norris, then gets the point. That
yeah.
solves that issue because
It would make things very easy. And look, I don't mind adding a fastest lap because it is another factor in the another variable in the equation. Perfect. But do it
I
a
think
bit
remove it
simpler.
anyway. It's fucking pointless. But yeah, just
It's not pointless. It's 1 point.
it's one
So,
point. Sorry, yeah. If I also like the fact it was like if I think someone from McLaren or maybe it was Zach Brown or some McLaren fan said, well, imagine now if McLaren or if Norris loses by 1 point, how fuming they'll be. I'd be like, well, if Norris loses by one fucking point, I'll tell you what, I'd be going, Zach, you've a fucking lot to answer now for Hungary, don't you, you moron?
yeah.
And for Monza, you moron. So RB taking 1 point away from you is the least of your
Least of the
problems at the
problems.
minute.
Yeah. And he's talking about points. Daniel Ricciardo. The entire weekend. I mean, I'll tell you something. So, as I think I've told you earlier as well, for Sports Club, we have a journalist there. And what information I was getting, it was slightly conflicting in terms of the general narrative. The general narrative was Daniel is out.
Yeah.
After this race, Daniel is gone. But what she was being told was that after multiple chats with the different, they have the spokesperson in place. So whenever you get
Yeah,
to
yeah.
chat with them, they were very, they said that nothing like this, no decision has been taken. It might be taken after the weekend. But the biggest, I think, what annoyed me in the entire situation was the lack of clarity from Red Bull. And that's
For
where it.
Daniel as well, because he clearly didn't have 100% of an answer.
So what came, so whatever I've been told is when he came into the weekend, he was 100% confident that nothing is going on. But by
The
the time the
decisions were all
weekend
for 2025,
ended,
basically.
yeah, either he was told something by the time the weekend ended, or he's read a lot of press and he's been through the same nonsense with McLaren, and there have been a lot of hints of maybe he's going, and then he kind of broke down a bit
Well,
in front of the media.
I'll tell you, on Saturday, I spoke to someone I know in Red Bull,
Yeah,
and he was sure that basically the essential way it was looking was that Ricardo would be out at the end of the season, and they were all this talk was about 2025, basically. I interestingly, basically the same narrative that Ricardo himself was talking about at the time. By Sunday, the same guy texts me, we're talking, and it was, he might be out after this weekend, you know. And I was like,
yeah,
oh, so basically it sounds to me like this was kind of a, if Ricciardo does a really good job on Saturday, we can't justify this, so let's kick it down the road. And if he does a really bad job on Saturday, then we can justify it, so let's just pull the trigger. That's what it sounds like to me. And that's a really odd position. But
That's a dumb way to go about things.
it's a really
honestly.
stupid way to do it. But the thing for me that doesn't make any sense is, right, if he's out at the end of the season, then that makes sense to me. It's kind of like, look, we've made our decision, whatever. The only reason to bring Lawson in now, is
Precisely,
because,
I
because
like where you're
Perez
going
needs to go
because
for next year. There's no other reason. Like, that's the only reason you bring him in. So
yeah,
the more I thought about it is, there's two things at play here. It's not only that Saturday went poorly for Daniel Ricciardo, it's that Saturday went terribly for Sergio
for
Perez.
Checo. 100%, 100
Which
fucking
means
percent.
that
That is the whole thing.
Yeah.
That is precisely the whole thing.
Which means that essentially now they're like, right, we've evaluated Daniel. We don't think it's going to work. We need to now quickly evaluate Lawson because
Yeah.
a decision needs to be made by December because this isn't working out.
Precisely.
That's the only reason that would have changed.
That is the most, again, who the fuck knows what happens? That is precisely what I thought. The only thing that came to my mind was, okay, so Checo had a great weekend in Baku. Pre that, he was okay. It wasn't too bad, but it wasn't great.
Yeah.
But this was the weekend where again he was back to being the Checo of old. That he was nowhere. And once Red Bull saw that, they realized that you cannot have 24 Baku weekends in a Formula 1 calendar. There's going to be one race where he'll be good. Maybe parachute him into the team for that race. But other than that, he's not doing the job.
Yeah.
And I think what Red Bull had in their mind was, this weekend, we're going to see how Checo does. And if he's not doing good, we need to evaluate Lawson.
Yeah.
We evaluate him alongside Yuki. Why? Because Yuki is not going to Red Bull.
Yeah.
And Daniel is not going to Red Bull.
And Yuki's got a contract for next year, so that's that done.
Yeah.
He's not
I mean,
moving.
Yuki is basically a Red Bull driver, so he can swap either ways.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
he's someone who's not going to Red Bull. They've made their mind on that.
Decision a long time ago.
Yeah.
To be honest, he's only at RB because he's bringing in cash for Honda. There's no from Honda. Like, that's it. There's otherwise he would have been dropped. You know.
A couple of years ago, honestly.
Which
a
is
couple
why
of years ago.
I would not be surprised if they're calling on Danny to come back at the start of January. For RB.
Who knows
I don't
what
think
happens
I don't
there,
think
yeah.
he wants to, though. I think it's Red Bull
He's
or
done.
nothing.
It's been a lot. I think this weekend was a lot on, and it's unfair because after 4 races, this nonsense started. It's not even like this is the first time this has happened. 4 races into the season, this thing started, and then it was found out. Apparently, he did have a cracked chassis. As soon as he got a new one in China, he beat Yuki. He's been pretty much on a level playing field with him.
They're 9-8 now after this weekend.
Something like that.
So,
Yeah.
like,
And
it's very
that's
close.
nothing to choose. That's
No.
basically nothing to choose between the two. And that's the main thing. Somewhere Red Bull has to find. Red Bull is in a desperate situation right now.
I mean,
and that's why actually Horner dropped Russell's name in the interview.
No, there is a chance as well. Like, this is a very outside chance that I've heard from one person, which is they have still not completely ruled out. This sounds crazy, but they've still not completely ruled out dropping Ricciardo into the second Red Bull for the last 6 races as well, to make sure they've evaluated everything. Now, I imagine by the way it was
They
phrased,
won't do it in Mexico.
No.
They will be killed.
Yeah. The way it was phrased to me was they still haven't completely ruled it out. That doesn't mean they're thinking about it. It's just
That's
the
what I've
option
heard
is
as well.
still technically on the table.
That's what I've heard as well. That Daniel is not. He'll be part of the Red Bull pool.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that meant. That was the term that was used. So
basically, it's kind of, it sounds more to me like they want to try and keep him. They're trying to keep him happy. It was a disastrous way to do it this weekend, but they're trying to keep him happy to kind of somewhat have a backup, because if Lawson does do well this year, but
again, by the way,
fails
this
in
also
Red Bull-
happened that as soon as the video came out of Daniel in tears, Horner and Marco went to see him. Apparently had a chat with him and whatever. But again, from Kim Illman actually put out that Daniel was in the paddock till 1:30 a.m. something. He was the last person to leave, and that felt bad actually. He wanted to soak
That's
in
like
everything.
yeah,
That felt bad. And
I
even
think, look, he had that interview with Sky, and I kind of it sounded ironically because of how the kind of his career started. It was very kind of a Vettel-esque kind of coming to terms with it moment that he had, where he was like, if I can't get to Red Bull, I'm not really going to fight for it anymore, because you can only kind of fight for P10 for so long when you're used to winning races. And I think
He's
that
right.
was kind of his like, yeah, that's it, you know.
Yeah.
So I just, you know what kind of bugs me, and I'm a Perez fan, as Sai, who one of our listeners would probably laugh at me for saying, because I constantly say, he's like, Jason, I'm a Perez fan or whatever. And I bantered with him actually over the Norris thing. I like having banter with him because I respect your opinion, unlike most of the people on X. There's there's a thing I will say, which is, given just how badly this season has gone for Perez, I really wish they would just give Ricciardo a proper send off by saying, you know what, we'll drop you into the Red Bull for the last 6 races. We can evaluate Lawson. You get a good run. You haven't been great, but you also, I mean, you haven't been terrible against Tsunoda.
That's the whole
Thank
thing.
you for everything. Here's 6 races. We lose some cash over Perez, but fuck it. Like, his contract says he can be thrown out anyway. So screw it. Like, why not do it?
Okay,
That's what Danny, I think, deserves. But
okay, I think I'll ask you another question. Which driver does Red Bull owe more, Sergio Perez or Daniel Ricciardo?
financially, or in terms of just because
Not financially.
financially it's Perez, isn't it?
I actually doubt that.
Well, maybe
Daniel's
not
pull,
actually. Yeah, Daniel's. Yeah.
he is
I
something
think.
else.
Look, I think Daniel just, it would be
No. Who do you think Red Bull owes more to?
Daniel.
Sergio.
I know Perez for the 2021, but after
No,
that, come on.
no. Because in 2018, Daniel was offered probably, I think it was the second or third most lucrative contract, something like that. And he left Red Bull pretty much abruptly.
Yeah, I get you. Okay.
Yeah. And by the way, Red Bull, again, Daniel was out of contract, had nothing in 2022. And out of the blue, it was again Red Bull that picked him up, brought them into their Saturn alongside
You have
them
to
for
understand
the.
though, Perez has hurt me this season with his performances.
I
Because
know.
I was backing him all the start of the year, and he's just had a worse season than Bottas in 2018. I can't defend that. I can't defend that.
You can't.
That's
I mean,
indefensible.
there's
I
always
can't.
Baku. There's always Baku, you know.
No, there's not, because he didn't even finish the fucking race. I can't defend that. I can't defend it.
So that's the thing.
He had one race of the year where he could have just left a little bit more space, backed up, and tried to take him on the next lap.
Yeah,
He didn't. It's
precisely.
over. I'm done. I'm finished. It's over. Sorry, Checo. I'd love to have
And
you on
that's
the
what I
podcast
think. And
sometime.
that's the whole bit, because I think Checo, in all likelihood, he will not be in a 2025 Red Bull seat. If
That's the
if
only
it's
reason to evaluate Lawson now. I think we both
that's
agree
what
on
they're
that.
doing.
That's the only reason.
And
Otherwise, you
that's
let
what they're
Danny
doing,
have
right?
the season. There's no
But
reason
what
to
if,
drop Danny otherwise.
the biggest problem that Red Bull faces right now is
What if Lawson doesn't work out?
yeah,
Like, what if
who,
Lawson jumps in and Tsunoda destroys him for the rest of the season?
and what if
Do you then?
what if Lawson does the same job that Daniel did?
No, but like even worse than that. What if Tsunoda destroys him for the rest of the season? Do you
Yeah,
then have a
then
decision where you go, shit, well, Danny was doing better than we thought. We're not going to upgrade Tsunoda. So do we call up Daniel, be like, oh, we're sorry, come back. Like, how bad does that look then?
yeah, precisely.
Like,
And Liam's test was not anything that turned heads or anything. The
realistically,
secret
they
test.
should have just give Lawson the seat at the start of this season. That's what they should have done. That would
Ideally.
have been the smart move. Or honestly,
Basically, what they should have done is
realistically,
they should have replaced Sergio Perez with Nico Hulkenberg and made everyone happy.
the honest truth of what they should have done was what I said over before we got to the summer break. After half a season of Perez not performing, or the summer break, they should have said, Danny's been doing a decent job against Tsunoda. It hasn't been out of this world, but we think we can make it work here.
Yeah,
So we're going to give him the other half of the season now at Red Bull. That gives us half a season to test Lawson, and then gives us, instead of 6 races now to see what the story is, like 6 races where anything could really happen, and it doesn't give you a clear picture. It's not half a season.
yeah.
It's a big mess. It's a really big mess for a team that should have an incredible junior.
It's a lack of I think it's a lack of ruthlessness, and Red Bull has lost a lot of it. It's become very complacent, and I think it's evident now. Even right now, I think ideally what they should do is, who do you think is the ideal fit
I blame Yoss for
alongside
all
Max
this
Verstappen
personally.
right now?
Huh?
Sorry? Who
I
do you
said
think is the
I
ideal
blame
fit
Yoss
alongside?
for all this. Um, Science would have been the ideal solution.
No, I don't think so.
Russell,
Science,
that's the other option.
they are
Piastri,
all going to ruffle the feathers. Who do you
Ricardo. Like it's no. Who are you saying then? Right? Like I don't.
either
Albon.
a Gasly or a Hulkenberg, or
Well,
who
Gasly
is
is
the
never
second
coming
string
back.
driver, huh?
Gasly is
Because
never
mostly
coming back.
what's going to happen is these drivers, maybe they'll have one or two good days, but they are not going to
Hulkenberg
be some.
destroys Verstappen in a championship. We both know that. Come on.
But we should not say that aloud. But yeah, I would rather, ideally what they have to do is they have to get very aggressive in the way they actually approach the championship now, because that's what brought Red Bull to the table. And I think a lot of conservatism, and then a lack of future proofing has hurt this team a lot. That's the whole thing. And right now they are juggling things in the worst possible manner.
Yeah.
Again, in my view, the way that Daniel Ricciardo thing has been managed, it's poor. They should be transparent, right? I don't think they were transparent with him in any point. And at no point throughout that weekend, Red Bull even once tried to quell the rumors that no, we are keeping Daniel for the rest of the
Lauren
season.
Meckies even came out
Nothing.
and said this could well be his last race, which
Yeah.
meant Lauren Meckies wasn't even saying this is his last race. He's saying this could be, which
Even
is
he
like,
doesn't know. Who
it's
knows?
insane. Like if Daniel Ricciardo, to be honest as well, like if you're Daniel Ricciardo, imagine you stayed there till 1:30. If they say, "Oh, we're keeping you," by the way, like sure you'll be relieved, sure you'll be relieved, but also a part of you has got to be, "What the fuck are you guys doing to me? Like, you know, this is ridiculous." Like, if they come
I
back
mean,
and say,
this
"By the
is
way,
you know
Daniel,
what
we
you
got
know what
you,
this
you're in the Red Bull," then
yeah,
sure, fair enough. He'll be like, "Oh,
yeah,
fuck
that
it,
smile will be
fine."
bigger
Yeah, yeah. But if they
for
come back now and
obvious
say,
reasons.
"We're keeping you in the RB," sorry about that. Surely he's
Yeah,
gonna be like, "Guys, what the fuck are you doing? I'm out. Leave me alone.
precisely.
Go
It's
away."
just
Like,
yeah, I don't think he'll stick around in the RB because look, the car sucks first of all, and if he wanted to just fight for a Q3 slot or a Q2 slot, I don't think that's what he wanted.
I
And
think if he
yeah,
wanted that, he would have taken. There was offers at like places like Williams and so on last year. Um, I think he probably would have gone there if he wanted a
I
long
think
career at
ideally
the
what he
back.
would have done, he would have called Audi. He would have.
Driven faster at McLaren is probably what he should have done. But anyway, um,
I mean, that's not in his control, though.
no.
Okay, I mean, enough of this. I think one thing we maybe should touch on a bit.
You
What
gonna
is
throw
Daniel
me under the
Ricciardo's
bus?
legacy
Oh, never mind. Um, yeah. Well, Jack
in
Villeneuve
terms
says he's
of?
never good, right?
I mean, if you scroll Twitter, yes, but there's a different reality to it. First you go ahead. What do you think? How would you remember Daniel Ricciardo? Because when it came to Vettel, I was very emotional. Um, when it came to Daniel, I wasn't emotional, but he's one of those drivers, just like maybe to an extent like Kevin Magnussen as well, who you want to see on the grid because they have the different personality and a different character. They bring something to the table.
Yeah, like this is the thing, right? Like that's what I'll miss more than anything else is the personality because like his on track performances. I think people who think Danny was like he's just a terrible racer and whatnot. I refuse to believe you were watching before 2020. Personally, that's my opinion
Yeah.
because even at Renault in the first those 2 seasons with Renault, some of the moves he made, some of the jobs he did were fantastic. So I think
He overachieved, right? He was
yeah,
P4 or P5 in the championship,
yeah.
ahead of both
And
Norris and Sainz and Leclerc.
And I genuinely think as well that there's a good point to be made that one, the McLaren was difficult. Clearly, like they all talked about that. But I do think more and more it's looking like kind of these regs just didn't suit his driving style at all. And they haven't. And you know what? Even Hamilton has talked about that these regs just don't suit him. He said that.
Those
That
are
happens.
excuses.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But that happens to drivers. Like, look at Nico Hulkenberg. Should have been brilliant. The tires clearly killed part of his career. should like that's part of the reason he's out. It's not like obviously there's more than just that, but like
The
big
weight.
change, yeah, big changes in the
He was
regulations.
10 kgs heavier
Yeah,
from
so,
Checo.
right. So big changes, though can change it. But yeah, I'll miss Daniel Ricciardo because it's another personality in the grid that you just don't have bantering. Like that's one big thing that's been gone since Vettel left, which is like Lewis Hamilton
Camaraderie
is
is there, but it's very vanilla, is
yeah,
what
like
I'll
Lewis
say.
Hamilton is vocal about certain things, but he's very to use that word, which I'm going to get called a racist now for saying Lewis Hamilton's vanilla. I'm like, that's good to say. So I'm going to get called a racist for that. But what I mean is, like, it's just he does give kind of that very kind of politically correct answer to
PR.
everything all the time, and yeah, whereas Vettel kind of just said it as it is. Kimi just he rarely spoke, but when
Yeah,
he did spoke,
I,
when
I
he did
and you
speak, it
know,
was
the
brilliant.
whole thing that happened with FI, I just had to go back 2012 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, the post race podium. That's the greatest podium for me because Kimi Raikkonen wins the race. Devil Coulthard asks him, "How do you feel?"
Yeah,
I'm fine.
yeah. Like he very rarely spoke, but when he did, it was brilliant. And like the problem is, like Max, I don't know. Max has
Max
been
does
great.
it sometimes, but
Max does
he's
it sometimes, but he's not that. That's just not his personality. He's not that kind of like bantery in front of the camera kind of wind up guy that Vettel was.
yeah,
And like Lewis isn't that guy. And Daniel is to an extent, especially when Daniel was winning, he would just come out with some like
the energy.
brilliant.
I mean,
I think
lick the
I kind
stamp
of
and send it, right?
as much as people don't like Lando, I think if Lando wins a championship and like kind of that pressure's off him, I think we'll start to see more of that because he has that in
Yeah.
him a little bit. He likes kind of playing around with people.
Yeah.
He just doesn't have the confidence right now, and I think we'll see that come out. But a lot of the other guys, they just. I feel like the Formula One's training this group of like PR trained youngsters now, and we're losing some of
Monkeys.
that kind of off the cuff thing. Verstappen, fair credit to him, he doesn't have that. He just does what he wants. It's
Yeah.
not as
That's
entertaining
why
all
I
the
got
time,
into
but
trouble.
this weekend was brilliant when his response to the sham that they did was incredible. And that's why I'll miss Daniel Ricciardo, Vettel, that kind of era of drivers who are willing to
I
just
think
kind of say what
Alonso
they
is there,
feel.
but I feel Alonso ends up being the only one. And when you're the only one who's speaking, sometimes it goes against you.
It just
And
doesn't.
that has
Yeah,
happened
yeah,
a lot of times with him.
yeah.
And I think for me, the
And
best,
also, Alonso has a reputation as an absolute shitstirrer, so people just
yeah,
don't take him seriously anyway. You know.
I think there was recently a comment made, right? That Kyle Larson and Max Verstappen, who is the best driver?
Mm.
Alonso said, I am.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, just
And he
brilliant.
might
But
be.
yeah, Daniel Ricciardo, I think people just, for me, it's just if you don't think it's a loss like of just him going, I feel like you haven't been watching. Sure, the last couple of seasons haven't been great. I get that he's holding it up for some younger
Yeah.
drivers to come in, but you know what? I could make the same argument for a few other drivers on the grid who shouldn't be
Bottas,
around
Joe,
anymore. Bottas has
K-Mag,
like yeah, absolutely.
Checo.
Checo, yeah, like these drivers should be by the same vein shouldn't be there either.
I forgot Lance Stroll. Jesus
Lance
fucking
Stroll,
Christ.
yeah.
That should have been the
Um,
first.
Daniel Ricciardo though, like the last of the late breakers was there because just some of his moves were just so
I think
good.
for me, yeah, I think for me, the moment I remember a lot, and probably it was peak Daniel Ricciardo before Max came into his own. It was in 2018. And it was Bahrain Grand Prix 2018.
Mhm.
Uh, Vettel held off Valtteri Bottas for a win, like very, very marginal, and it was a case of I think Vettel was on pretty old tires and Bottas was catching him like anything. On the very last lap, Bottas ideally should have gone for a lunge on the down the inside on turn one. He didn't, and Daniel had only one thing to say. He said, "Look, mate," in like his typical Australian accent. "Look, mate, you have to lick the stamp and send it."
Yeah.
In the very next race, by the way, in the Chinese Grand Prix, again, Daniel got a bit lucky with the strategy and he went on an overtaking spree. He overtook Lewis, Kimi, Vettel, Max spun off and had a collision or something. And then the last overtake was on Valtteri Bottas in typical Daniel Ricciardo fashion, where it was right at the last moment, down the inside, late braking. Bottas was caught unawares, and that was peak
There's
Daniel Ricciardo. And
there's a reason
you
why
have to you should have been there to see the kind
there's
of
there's
beautiful
a
move.
reason why Piastri's move in Baku was compared to Daniel Ricciardo, and it's
Yeah.
not because he's Australian.
Yeah.
I think a lot of younger fans probably just thought, "Oh, he's Australian, that's why." It's like, no, it's because even watch Baku 2017, was it, with Daniel Ricciardo?
Triple overtake.
Oh, just like those moves he was making. I would kind of love, to be honest, if Daniel Ricciardo after this weekend is told, "Look, you're not going to Red Bull, but we'll keep you in the V-Carb for the rest of the season." Because if he knew like this was the end, he had 6 races, I think you would see kind of just a fuck it, let's go have fun, Daniel Ricciardo. And I think it would be brilliant to watch. I'm kind of glad he did come back, because I do think no one expected much in V-Carb, I think, realistically. And
Yeah.
I think just this is kind of washed that McLaren stink off it, where it's like, okay,
I'd
it's
say
been
yes.
kinda
And I
nice.
think,
It's nice to just have him back in the paddock for a while. That's what it
and
did.
again, he's one of the look, if Daniel Ricciardo tomorrow wins a race, ideally, again, there are haters for everyone. He has plenty, but people would be very happy. That would be a feel good moment.
Yeah.
You can say that would be a feel good moment. You'll hear it. Even if he overtakes Lewis Hamilton for a win, you'll see Crofty being happy, which is very rare that happens, and even Ted Kravitz being happy,
It was like
which happens very
the
rarely.
amazing swing of how happy everyone was when Vettel made some cool overtakes in Coda in the Aston, remember?
Yeah,
I know it was just fighting for lower points to it.
maybe
It
that's
was
why
just
they
like
were.
it was like we're just seeing Vettel now with not a care in the world. Just he knows it's over. He's just having fun out there, and
Yeah,
it was nice to watch after years of watching Vettel struggle. It was
Yeah.
kind of like, this is a nice ending, you know.
that's how, and I think Daniel deserves that.
Sadly,
I'd
it
say
didn't
Daniel
end in
deserves that.
2023 because he would have got a load of podiums. Imagine if Vettel had stayed. Oh,
He would have won. He would have won the Monaco Grand Prix because
I
he
think
would have
so
been a
too.
better qualifier than Alonso.
I think so too. And Alonso fans would be annoyed at that. But yeah, we've got
Yeah,
4
they're
weeks
few
now
and
to
far
the next
away.
race.
Again, finally the FIA fiasco. I think you probably have a right ready.
I'm tired of people swearing like rappers. First of all,
Yeah, let's start with that. The whole, because I think your tweet got it. Did it get too much? Were you called a racist for it?
I don't know. I have notifications off. I have no idea how that performed. To be honest with you, I think I put a note under it to say I'm sure, knowing this platform, within 5 minutes I'll be called a racist. My
So were
only
you?
point, probably. I haven't checked. My point was just, look. The thing is,
Just give the context first.
so first of
In
all,
case
it was
anyone
basically Mohammed bin
living in the wrong
Sulayem.
desert seed.
Yeah, so MBS, Mohammed bin Sulayem, not the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, said that
The dictator.
the dictator, yeah, the dissident. That's a great documentary, by the way. It's about Khashoggi.
Which one?
The Dissident. It's about Khashoggi.
Oh, the from James Fogle.
I think
The
so. Can't remember.
yeah, the guy that made which one is it? The bird that flew close to the
The sun
fuck.
or whatever. Yeah, I don't know.
the movie on WADA, the Russian doping thing.
Oh,
Icarus. James.
Yeah.
It was also a James Fogle thing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
But yeah,
coming back.
That's way off topic. But yeah. So what was I going to say? Yeah. So Mohammed bin Sulayem essentially said that he's sick of these drivers swearing like rappers, and he's on a rant after that. And then they brought in a new kind of rule, and Max Verstappen immediately broke it, swore. I think while discussing the rule or something. Anyway, I can't.
No.
remember.
So here's what happened. First of all, Mohammed MBS, he went ahead and said that we don't want abuses when you are either in the FIA conference room where the official press conference is happening, or on team radios. These are the two zones where you should not be using cuss words or abusive or
And he was
inappropriate language.
And he said, "Don't broadcast it then," or something, right?
Yeah, that I think that has been one of the bigger conversations. Why are you even broadcasting those things if you don't want them on TV?
Yeah.
But
Talk to
anyhow,
the
the bigger thing was here. What he said was, we are not rappers. We are not supposed to abuse or something. So
yes.
for me, again, look, I'm from India. I have no idea of how the whole thing happens in Europe and in the West. So, what was your take on the whole thing? Because
So
as soon as I
just
saw that, I had no reaction.
no,
It didn't really matter to me. I
I
had zero
saw
correlation with
the
that.
I
But
saw the
Lewis
quotation about
apparently
rap.
came out.
So I saw the quotation about rappers, and I it went over my head for one reason, probably because I'm white and I've got all this privilege around me. But it went over my head just because I was more concerned about, well, the team radio element is stupid. You're not going to stop the drivers cursing when they're driving 200 miles an hour into corners
Yeah,
because, as Vettel famously said, mic up a football player and see what they say while they're running around a pitch, like,
precisely.
with adrenaline running. And, then Verstappen kind of saying about, just don't broadcast it, which was a very intelligent move. If he had just said calmly, guys, can we just cut down on the swearing in the press conferences and we're going to monitor it. And if it keeps getting kind of out of hand, then we'll have to do something. That would have been fine. Perfect
Yeah.
reaction. So I was more concerned about this is a stupid way to handle this. And then I read the thing about people going crazy about Hamilton basically saying, why does he have to bring race into it? At which point I went, what? When did he bring race into this? So I went back and read the article and was like, I don't see any race in this. And then saw, oh, it's about the rappers part. And my immediate thinking on that was, well, the way I took that was the same as during the 90s when I was growing up. Lots of people around me in Ireland said, like, these rappers swear too much. It was a big thing about rappers. And we were talking about, like, not only black rappers, but the Beastie Boys, Eminem, like tons of white rappers as well at the time who also
Yeah.
cursed a lot. So I didn't take it racially. Now, as someone pointed out underneath, I did read one comment and I had an interaction. There's a Hamilton fan, I think it's called St. Louis. Really nice guy. We have loads of interactions. We argue about tons of things to do with Lewis, but him and another guy made a good point, which was rappers and thugs is used a lot, especially in America, to kind of be against black people, right? And that's fair enough. And maybe, like, I as I conceded, I was like, poor choice of words. The optics are
Yeah.
bad. That's fine. But the problem I have with this is, for all we know, his way of looking at rappers could have been the exact same as mine, which is when I think of music, if you said to me, what's the most swearing in music? I'd immediately say rap. And I wouldn't be thinking of it in terms of black people. I'd just be thinking rap just
The genre.
traditionally has a shit ton of, like, because rap was the one that always had the explicit marker on it the whole time,
Yeah.
where no other music really did, except for some, like, proper
Very
heavy
random
metal.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was usually rap. I just thought of it that way. It wasn't like a black or white issue for me. And so I'm like, well, look, if he said it and he meant it racially and he said something racist, then fine, have a go at him for being racist. But making it about race, for me, is just adding to race issues and not fixing them. Because if he didn't mean it in a racial way and he just meant, well, yeah, rap stars always curse more than fucking, rock artists. So I'm saying rappers. Like, if he had said footballers, they would have immediately clearly gone, there's a lot of black footballers then. Like, you know what I mean? So my problem is, it's just like when someone says rappers and thugs and they're a congressman in America and they're talking about crime on the streets and specifically talking about black crime, then it's like, okay, that's not on. That is racist. But there's nothing here to indicate that he meant it in a racial way. So jumping to race is just completely you're adding fuel to a fire that doesn't exist. Like, Lewis could have easily been like, oh, well, I'm going to talk to him because I think that has a racial context. But it was the way it came across was like, why would you say that publicly to everybody and just throw fuel on the fire and try and make it about race when it wasn't about race? It obviously wasn't. It was poor choice of words. Fuck, I don't know. I don't know what's in his head. Maybe it was racist. Maybe I'm wrong. But there was nothing in that was intrinsically racist. So to make
Yeah.
it about race for me is just, I think it just takes, this is a bigger issue for me though, because I think just we've got this world now where, and I hate to side with Matt Wallace on anything because I hate to do it. I really do. But I do think he's right in one sense, not completely. But we're in a world now where they try and make everything about some issue and put everyone in a box all the time and make it so that if any white person ever comments on anything to do with any black people, it's intrinsically racist. And I just don't want that to come into F1 when F1's trying to make fucking ground up here. Like, we celebrate Lewis Hamilton for being the first black driver. We want more of that. It should be
Yeah.
a positive thing, not constantly brought in as a negative thing. It's not helpful at all.
Precisely. And I think for me, again, I come in from a very outsider's perspective. From when I'm from India, I've met it's very rare. You meet people from Africa and stuff. It's not often. And we don't really know what kind of racism blacks face. So when I first
Of
read
course,
that,
yeah.
I couldn't understand the whole thing. Now since you talk about how it happens in the United States, probably it does.
Yeah.
But again, for me, the worry is not. I think bringing racial connotation into it. I doubt that. Honestly, I doubt that MBS is even smart enough to do that. That's the first thing that comes into my mind. He's a dumb cookie.
He's
That's what I've actually
also
understood in the last 3 years. That he's even if it comes to him, he would have rather been very explicit when it comes to
also
these
I
things.
mean, look, I'm not an expert on these things. I'm he's not white either, right? So like,
Yeah,
so
he's Middle East. He's from Saudi, I think.
now to be
So
fair, you could say like, this is one of the things I would say. He is from a privileged background, as far as I'm aware. He's from a quite wealthy background,
filthy rich.
rich. So maybe he's never encountered any sort of like had a very sheltered life,
Yeah,
and like maybe it is
and
just
that's
racist.
that's actually
Maybe.
what I'll get to now, because I think what has actually happened is I don't think it was. I think the intention was not to be racist,
Yeah.
and I think at some point you have to, again, maybe look, everyone has a different view, but at some point you have to take the word from the source that it is being said, and sometimes it gets missed. And being an Indian, I've seen a lot of nonsense that actually gets thrown on to Indians, and
Yeah.
it's become very common. But the thing is, I also sometimes have to sit back and understand where it's coming from and to whom and what's the intent.
Yeah.
Before we understand these things, it becomes crude to make these assertions.
Hmm.
And I think similar thing happened. I think there was recently, or maybe sometime back, there was an outrage on Serena Williams because someone said she takes a lot of she used to take a lot of performance enhancing drugs, and the same thing happened at that point in time, that it's it's an attack on race or something like this, but it wasn't.
No.
Maybe she does, I don't know. I won't even comment on that. I'm not going down that road.
Yeah.
But the point is, I think that completely derailed the whole thing, and the discussion should have been on the very, very basic thing, which was MBS is a fucking idiot. That's the
Yeah.
main debate.
I
'Cause
will point
that's
out
the whole point.
I did not want to be defending him either, because I don't
Yeah.
particularly like him. It's just I just thought you're smashing on
Making
the
it about
absolute
something which
wrong
it
issue.
does not need to be
The
made
issue
about.
should have been like, this guy's a moron. Why are you bringing this rule in? This is a complete farce. Not, wait a minute, is that guy racist? It's like, what? Hold on, what? Like, can we stay on the issue here for a minute? Because what happens then is, as I've just said, is the problem with that is, then when you get actual issues with racism, I'm trying to remember, there was like an issue in 2007 with Hamilton. Is it
In
Spanish Grand
Spain.
Prix? Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
the Alonso fans wearing the whole black
so
face.
this is the problem, is that like, the problem is if you continue to make everything about race, then nothing is important anymore. That's
Yeah.
the problem I have. And I think we were going the right
Just like the
direction.
word anti-Semitic. Should we add it, or just cut that word out before
It doesn't
it
matter.
gets flagged or
Yeah,
something?
no, but it doesn't matter. Like, we've talked about this in the past, and I've
Yeah.
said it a lot, which is to kind of completely say that any word against Israel is anti-Semitism takes away
dumb.
from actual anti-Semitism issues.
Yeah.
Because if you just apply it to everything, there are people who are actually facing,
By the way,
proper-
who are Semites?
yeah, like it's the, sorry, explain, because I'm going to explain it wrong.
Even Palestinians are Semites.
Yeah, so it's
Egyptians
everyone
are
from that
Semites.
region, right? It's kind of, yeah.
But somehow only one particular
Yeah.
country owns the word.
I
Anyways,
was thinking to myself, I was like, it's from that area and from the old, kind of the Old Testament, right? But then I was, yeah.
Yeah.
But this is just the whole point of it is just, I think the problem is if you keep doing this, then what happens is people who like actual instances of racism just become part of
they
the
get
noise.
discredited.
It just becomes
Discredited.
part of the noise.
Yeah.
You know, and then that's not helping anybody. So if
Yeah.
you just make everything about race, then what you're doing is just making it to a point where when there actually is a problem with
People are
racism, people just
too
go, like,
sanitized,
people just
sensitized
go,
by
oh
that.
right, yeah, no, well, yeah, and you get a problem where like a big fucking incident happens in Formula One of actual racism, and people go, ah, yeah, but you called that rapper thing racism as well. So what is racism? You
Yeah.
know, like
Precisely.
that to me is the key problem. There's people
Yeah.
who are actually, including Hamilton, who have faced actual racist attacks in
Yeah.
the sport, in real life as well, like bigger problems as well. And these should be treated as actual problems. But
Yeah.
when you just lump everything into it, then it's like, oh, well, what's the real problem then? I don't really
Yeah.
know. That's my issue. And
No, it's
the
fair.
problem
It's
is a
fair
lot
enough.
of the time, I get stick a lot of the time as well. Actually, a friend of mine, like I chatted with him about for the documentary I made, Femi. Like we've talked about this, and I'm like, sometimes I just don't like to bring it up because I just know I'm going to get the stick of you're a white guy, you can't talk about this, and I'm like, well, if I can't talk about this, then we're never going to solve this issue because, like if you're saying all white people are racist, then we can't solve this issue.
Yeah.
We can't fix, which is again why I hate saying that because now it sounds like I'm agreeing with Matt Wallace, and I don't want to agree with Matt Wallace. But
Means
there is
why are you even listening to that guy?
but listen,
Yeah,
even a broken
that's
clock,
where you and I differ. Because in my
even a
case,
broken
Matt
clock is
Wallace
right.
gets muted as soon as he appears on my timeline.
Yeah. Like, but even a broken clock is right twice a day, right? So, like,
I
even
won't hold my
stupid people
I
say-
won't hold my breath for those two particular moments in a day.
Even
So-
bigoted, stupid people say something mediocrely correct once in a while.
I mean, Nikki Haley did right. She said there are basically two people on their deathbeds fighting, and the party which is the first to take their candidate out is going to win.
Yeah.
Surprise!
we're
Who's
in a
leading?
world. We're in a world now, though, where the world is just insane. Like,
Yeah.
the argument for Kamala Harris at the moment is just she's better than Trump, and I'm like, oh, that's a great benchmark to pick a president.
The argument for Kamala Harris is she's normal. That's
No,
the
but she's
only
not.
argument.
It's just like it. No, but it's literally, oh, she's better than him. I'm like, sure, I've got an Xbox controller that would be a better president of the United States than
Yeah.
Trump is. Should that Xbox controller be voted in? No. Can we focus on the issues here and stop putting everything in a fucking box?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Anyways,
If
coming
you
back to the
enjoyed this,
issues
check out
at
Jason
hand, by the
Hassett's
way.
show.
That would be a great teaser for
Great
that.
advertisement for my show, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Anyways, coming back to this thing, I think the whole what's the biggest complaint we have about form, and this is what was my biggest pet peeve, and I've written an article on it. I've yet to publish it. What's your biggest pet peeve for a Formula One driver right now?
In terms of what?
We just talked about it, by the way. They are too fucking robotic.
Yeah.
It's every statement is a PR trained statement. It's not original. It's basically stuff that they have to say, which has to be very well curated. Why?
Which is why
if it
Max's
is
response to this was so good.
yeah,
It was so good.
perfect.
Yeah.
And you know, if a sport already suffers from a fact that the Formula One driver's personality is not coming out, then do you want to bring something that will suppress it even more?
No.
How does it make sense?
When's the next election for FIA president, by the way? Soon.
I'd run for it at this stage. Yeah.
I've got a Trump beater here that can run for it if you want. Probably beat MBS at this point.
Seriously, I think
To be honest with
anything
you, I actually
would. By
think
the way,
actual
it's-
MBS would be better than this MBS.
I mean, no, I don't think so.
No, probably not.
Yeah.
Did he win? No. Have him killed.
Yeah. Got him up in Turkey. Anyways,
Jesus Christ.
not too many
Don't bring
Jamal
Christmas
Khashoggi
into
jokes.
this.
Yeah.
Oh, I tried to move away from it there, and you had to say his name. That's it. Now we're banned from going to Turkey ever. Thanks a lot.
It's all
And
right.
Saudi
I mean,
Arabia. I'm never going to be able to visit Jeddah now. Thanks a lot. I wasn't going to, but thanks a lot.
yeah. Anyways, yeah. I mean, the whole point was, and I think it's not for me. The biggest pain has been, what the fuck are the team principals doing in all this? What's the team leader doing? What's Stefano Domenicali doing where he sits back and doesn't utter a word when
That's
something
what I
as
didn't
nonsensical
understand.
as this comes up from the FIA?
That's what I didn't understand, because like if imagine if the FIA had have done that under Bernie's range, Bernie would have been on camera about 5 minutes later saying the FIA can fuck off. Like,
Yeah.
he would have, like, immediately. It would have been brilliant. But under this kind of Liberty era, it's like, oh, well, we did get Liberty to back us against Andretti, so we better play ball now. Wait until we see what Liberty want to do. And it's all gotten very corporate and frustrating.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I jokingly at the start of this year, it's like earlier last year, said bring back Bernie, and it's becoming less of a joke because I'm kind of like,
Yeah.
oh, this is just. Bernie would have immediately he would have, that, like, I'm not even kidding, for anyone who's watching, wasn't watching during the Bernie era, I guarantee you he would have actually been on camera being like, he can fuck off. Like, and they would have had to bleep it, and Sky would have been like, oh, sorry about that bad language there.
Yeah, Brendan, we apologize for the language.
We apologize for the language from the owner of the F1. Like, Eddie Jordan would have been out cursing like a sailor.
Who are some of the most loved drivers in F1 history? It's the unabashed Kimi Raikkonen.
Kimi would have been. Can you imagine
James
Kimi?
Hunt?
Oh, James Hunt, big balls.
James Hunt has an interview where Sterling Moss questions him, "What makes you fast?" He said, "Big balls."
It's so good. If you Google that, it's so good.
And if a driver comes up and says something like this right now, he would be sent for community service. I mean, what do
you think the interview
fucking
would have
hook,
gone?
by the way.
What do you think the interview would have gone with Kimi during that? Like,
just imagine.
Did you say to them cursing? I think it's fucking stupid shit.
I was taking a shit. I mean,
Vettel probably would have shown up with a T-shirt with "fuck" written across it immediately.
Yeah,
like just
utter nonsense. Yeah. And I think Max handled it the best way possible.
This was what annoyed me so much. Is like Max came out with a brilliant response. Vettel and Kimi would have, and that I think is what annoyed me. Where Hamilton just went, "Why is he bringing race into it?" And I'm like, "Oh, please, like, can you argue against the point? Like, I get it. I get your." Like, I get that there are probably races, but this is not the time. Like, please.
And because
what he's actually done there is everyone's now going, is this racist? Instead of going, hold on a minute, can we stop this rule? Like, this is stupid. Why are we talking?
Yeah. And it almost makes MBS seem smart, because he maybe just threw this line in and Lewis derailed everything into an entirely different direction where probably didn't need to go.
Maybe he literally had planned that in his head. Like,
he's not that smart.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
You're right, yeah.
I think, and at least, by the way, there is an update that the drivers are going to talk to the FIA, probably in FOM as well.
I mean, what
about the whole thing.
What was the community service? But it was like he has to do an act of public good or something like
What
that.
rubbish was that? The wording was so stupid.
What does that even mean?
Like, just say community service. They didn't want to use the word community service because it would have sounded like he stole something or broke something big. Yeah. And by the way, what Max also said was that I think the problem is, look, something like this could have been applied in a very smart manner, where, of course, what Max said was the car was shit. Just for saying that the car was shit, he was given this whole thing. Yeah. And they could have just he went to the stewards, give him a reprimand, and have a chat that maybe don't use this kind of language in the future.
To be honest with
That's it.
Even less than that. They could have just said, look, there's too much cursing. Say they're cursing like rappers, do whatever the fuck you want, but just say, like, we need to crack down on this. We're going to talk to the drivers this weekend and come up with a plan going forward to kind of curb this, because we know we have younger people watching it. If he had just said, like, we're going to make a plan, we're going to sit down with the drivers, we're going to sit down with F1 teams, we're going to figure out what we can do about this, because I think it's a core issue that we need to deal with. If he had said that, and then in 2 races time, they had said, okay, if you curse during this, we're going to be a fine, and also we're going to stomp down on them playing the broadcasts out. I think everyone would have been like, yeah, fair enough. Like, that's
sure,
fair enough.
And I think drivers have already said, don't play it. We don't mind.
Yeah.
And so they'd rather this stuff is not played in public. They'd rather have that, because
it just would have been a reasonable response to it. But what you're going to have now is you're going to have more and more drivers are going to fall into this, get community service, and they're going to end up with a situation that in Abu Dhabi, if they keep going this way, you're going to have a press conference with the top 3 drivers where they're like, did you enjoy the race? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, and the only person to blame is going to be Ben Sulayem. Like, it's going to be like, well,
I think the man is, I think he's in, he has a set of beliefs that don't exist in the current world, and that's, I'll say, he's, as you said, he's from a very, this is privilege, and from a very conservative part of the world. He wants his drivers to be something, but what he does not understand is he does not control them.
This is where the word privilege, again, is another pet peeve for me, because I think it's been used too much, because there's a lot of white people who are from very unprivileged backgrounds.
Yeah.
People like Ben Sulayem, that's privilege. That's growing up in a world where you're sheltered from everything, and you get to live the life you want to live because all the funding and the resources are there for you. Probably turn out
Everything
he's
is there.
poor now, but I'm fairly sure he's rich as fuck. Like, I'm fairly sure.
Yeah.
So if I'm wrong,
Anyways.
sorry, shout at me in the comments. But yeah, like, you know, the fact that he's worried about cursing when there's like, it's such a non-issue as well, to be honest.
Yeah,
It
I think it
fix
shouldn't
the
even be.
2026 regulations,
By the
and
way,
then we'll
FIA
fucking talk.
is currently the FIA organization. It has been criticized for being inefficient, for having inconsistency in giving penalties, and even the basic stuff. Like last year, they had an issue at Vegas where the inspection was not proper.
Yeah,
When an organization
they
is
nearly
going,
killed Carlos Sainz.
yeah,
You know,
and when an organization is going through this nonsense, is this thing the most important for them? No, it's basically him trying to either gain some attention or trying to show who is the big guy.
yeah.
That's the entire. It's an entire
Also,
fucking power play which
This is a guy
need
who,
not
up
be
until
there.
recently, had to back off from like day-to-day running of F1
And he
was
hasn't,
making
right?
so many
Yeah.
stupid mistakes.
And he's
Like,
back.
Yeah, and all of a sudden he's back making another stupid rule. Like, when is I need to find out real quick. When is the next vote for FIA? Because
I don't think it even matters because with John Todd, he became one in 2009, if I'm not wrong, and he stayed until 2021. So he had
it just
three
depends
terms.
on when you're voted in, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, so he came in at 2021 end. So he'll be
I
there until
wonder-
2025, probably.
Yeah, I wonder. I'm just going to pull down the election guidelines. I'm going to see if it's possible. For
What's
me
the
to
term?
run.
What's the term length? Simply search.
That's what I'm trying to find here. Yeah, I'm just wondering if I'm allowed to run as well. Total of you may be elected for a total of 3 terms in office. Where's the actual term limit though? Term. There's what? Why is there no? I don't see any actual like.
4-year term.
Is it 4 years? Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, maximum duration of 12 years in the same position.
Yeah.
So
So basically, Jean Todt stayed until he couldn't, and then he moved on.
So when was he voted in? It was 2020 December 2020.
After Abu Dhabi, the perfect time.
Brilliant, yeah. So John Todd went, right, this was great, I'm out. See you guys. John Todd is a genius.
Picked the perfect exit, right?
John Todd literally was just like, good timing. Left and gone, like, not my problem. Brilliant.
Oh God.
So Jesus, yeah. Like, so the next election must be what, the end of this
2025
year?
end.
2025 end. Oh Jesus. So
Yeah.
basically, Ben Sulayem could leave us with just a terrible regulation set, and off he goes.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Another reason to look forward to 2026.
Yeah.
Look, if it's chaos, I don't mind. If we head into 2026 and we have a Haas winning the championship, bravo. Do it.
If we go into
But
2026 and we have Mercedes or Red Bull winning, I'll go insane. Enough.
I'll lose my mind.
Enough.
Yeah.
You had your time. Enough, guys. Come on. You've had 7 championships each.
Yeah.
Enough.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Take
we're
a
done
beat.
now. Yeah.
Take a beat.
Let Ferrari, let anyone else win. I don't care who it is, just anybody else.
Yeah.
And watch it.
I mean,
Lewis
yeah.
Hamilton go on a run of 4 championships, or something, but in a Ferrari.
Imagine if
I'd
it's.
be fine with that as long as it's in a Ferrari.
By the way, imagine if it's Fernando Alonso winning 5 titles in a row in an Aston Martin, winning the title as a 50-year-old. I'd love that.
Yeah.
Just to see it, because
Formula
when I'm 80 years
Formula
old,
One
at
Twitter
least
will
I can
burn to
say
the
I've
ground.
seen that. I've witnessed
Formula
that.
One Twitter will burn. If Alonso gets an 8th title, Formula One Twitter will burn to the ground. That would be that, especially if he wins it against Verstappen. Like, it would
Oh
be the
God,
end.
that would be the
of-
yeah.
Yeah. He wins it due to a late safety car against Verstappen, 8th title. End of
Aided by
world.
the race
Aided by-
director.
Aided by the race director, formerly President Mohammed bin Sulayem. Yeah.
Oh God,
Yeah.
that would be fun. Okay, just to cap it off before we close everything.
It was a long podcast.
Yeah, it's been a long one.
Yeah.
The whole thing between Horner claiming that Red Bull will be looking at George Russell for 2026. Is he
There is a but.
basically, yeah,
Yeah,
is it that, or do you think he might be serious about it?
I reckon, to be honest with you, like I reckon he looks at it because if Max leaves, then that's a great replacement. Like people massively underestimate how good Russell is, and I also think there is part of it which is he's just doing
Toto
what
is doing with
Toto's trying to
Max.
do it with Max, which is they're probably looking at it and going like, well, I mean, Toto is courting Max. Russell is there. He's bringing up Kimmy. He's making Russell look like second fiddle in the team now that
Yeah,
Hamilton's leaving when he's supposed to be replacement. So you know what? If I now push for Russell, even if I never sign him, I'm causing internal problems where maybe Russell starts going, wait, why amn't I getting preference? Which he
yeah.
should be. Russell should be looking at it and going, why aren't you backing me 100%? Like I've done everything I can here. Like give me a car and I'll prove to it what I can do. Like so, I
By the
think
way,
it's stirring the pot,
that's
but I wouldn't be surprised if Russell became available. It also wouldn't be a terrible option.
it
Like
would be a
it's
perfect option. It
yeah,
would be a perfect option
because we
because
know he'll play the team game as well. So
he won't need to. He'll be the lead driver in that case, right? If
well,
he replaces
if first
Max.
if he replaces Max, yeah, if he's
Yeah.
alongside Max, different situation.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
even then, it would be nice. I mean, for a change, Max will have a teammate which will be competitive.
yeah.
So yeah, I think I think
Since
what Horner
Ricardo
and
beat him
I
two
think
out of three
you know
seasons.
what was the biggest thing for me. I think we talked about it earlier as well. Red Bull finally being on the offensive as a team. This was Horner also doing his bit, like
Yeah,
Marco did, and they haven't done that throughout the season. They've been
no,
basically giving explanation for
they've been
fingers and
fighting
league
fires the
stuff
whole
and
time.
fighting with each other. Utter nonsense. And finally,
This is the thing, isn't it? Like this is where Horner's been fighting fires internally, which has been a nightmare. Like he's been fighting off the Austrian board basically, and
yeah,
like Horner is brilliant on the offensive. Like, do you remember with the cost cap? He was just like, "I'm just gonna go sit in front of the press now for 30 minutes. Ask me whatever the fuck you want," and just that was the best response
and he
ever. Just
sat there.
I'll
Yeah,
just sit there and I'll go through it all and I'll give you the same answer again and again. I'll look annoyed, but fuck it, like he obviously
yeah,
didn't enjoy it, but that was it. It was like, right, job done. Let's move on now. And Horner's
just
really
yeah.
good at that. And I kind of miss I miss hearing him kind of slandering people. He's been very quiet.
The ruthlessness this season has not. This season has been a lot of defense,
Yeah,
and I think even I think maybe Red Bull is starting to realize that that's not the DNA of the team.
no,
So maybe it's time
the
to
underdog
bounce back.
DNA needs to come back.
Yeah,
They've always been the underdog. Even when they were winning titles, they've always been the underdog.
yeah. They've never been
Um,
given the credit, right? It's always
yeah.
one guy or whatever. But
It's
again,
always like
this
you're
is the time.
cheating, you're working with the FIA, you're doing this.
That too.
It's all just
Flexi wing, by the way.
Verstappen,
By the way,
flexi
flexi
wings.
wings,
Yeah,
which Red Bull used to have, if anyone's listening, if they are
which Red
illegal
Bull will
with
have in
McLaren.
Austin, one
Oh
hundred
yeah, by
percent,
the way.
100%. That's going to be
Yeah,
hilarious. Where it's like people don't understand. This is Formula One. Like if an engineer finds an advantage that's within the rules, then
yeah,
he should take it. Like people are like, oh well, all these rules did we test it? It's like, look, if it passes the test, it passes the test. Like we're not talking about a murder investigation here. It's Formula One. Like calm down.
yeah.
You know. But anyway, yeah.
Okay,
Cool.
time to wrap it up.
Yeah, we've got 4 weeks now of no F1, so we're gonna have to come up with some themes for the next few races.
Yeah,
We
we'll
need to
have
get
a few
Mobile
things
back
planned.
on as well. I missed that guy.
Hmm?
Mobile chicane.
I
I
think
missed
he'll
him.
be available next week, right? He
I
should
hope
be.
so. I missed that
Yeah.
guy. He's like you, but better.
No, he's got no hair.
He's like me, but better then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
And
So
the
we'll
thing
leave it there.
is, this time around he'll actually have a face.
Hopefully.
So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and not hopefully his networks.
Yes.
Anyways, by the way, guys, thanks for watching. Good one. It extended. I think yeah, that's become the norm. 2 hours is something we
Yeah.
tend to do.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Also, there's
good chat.
a lot of storylines in these races. So
It was fun. Honestly,
yeah.
I didn't. Yeah, there were a lot of things that needed to be covered. But yes, it was fun. Had a good time. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, guys, for watching. See you next time.
Don't forget to
Drop a
subscribe.
like, drop a comment, hit subscribe. Take care. Bye bye.